Hello, welcome to the Redeye stream. Today we are going to hopefully stay away from politics for the most part. There is politics in television, so I'm sure we'll be dragged that way sooner or later. I'm joined by Doku, the artist formerly known as Zero Cool.
And I don't get that little symbol there like Prince does. He copyrighted that one.
Yeah. So I know what shows I want to talk about, but other than The Expanse, they're kind of older. You wanted to talk about the current stuff, right, Dade?
Yeah, I wanted to talk, and I'm going to go solo on this one because I'm simply making observations that don't necessarily require the comments from the peanut gallery. I'm going to be talking about Stargirl, Supergirl, and Batwoman, and how basically with only 5 episodes in, Stargirl seems to be the antithesis of the other two, which is fucking amazing, and I'll tell you why later.
All right, and Doku, I don't know what shows he's going to complain about, but we could all agree MASH is the best show ever, right?
Faulty Towers.
Red Dwarf.
There you go. I'll take Red Dwarf over Faulty Towers any day.
See, I've always been a fan of Battlestar Galactica.
You're a Babylon 5 fan. Don't hide it.
Actually, no, I like Farscape. I am that nerd. I don't care what anyone says. I love Farscape.
There's nothing wrong with that.
Actually, best show ever. I don't know. It could be MASH, but then again, there's the Twilight Zone over there, like saying, "Look at me, look at me."
You know what I think your favorite show is, and you just don't want to admit it, Mad Dodge, is The Fall Guy.
No, I did like.
Come on, I was gonna say shit. Am I the only one who knows that show? Come on.
I did like the show Leverage over on was it TBS or TNT? But
Leverage is good.
Well, I remember The Fall Guy. It's just that it was that's like in the third decade ago. No, I thought Dodge's favourite show was like the Care Bears Hour.
Well,
hey, fuck it.
Don't be fucking with Grumpy Bear.
If we're going down that road, fuck it. Thundercats.
Yeah, I'd fuck Chitara.
Dude, I watched the new Thundercats show with the kids.
Which one? Which one?
I don't know. It was on Spectrum, so it's on cable.
No, which one? The one from 2011 or the Thundercats Go shit?
I think it's the brand new shit because I think it's that new episode.
Is it the one that one that looks like Steven Universe, like bullshit art style?
Yeah, that's
or
Thundercats Go. That's the CalArts shit.
Yeah, it looked really fucking weird and pastel-y. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I haven't watched it myself, but I've watched plenty of reviews, especially Clownfish TV's review on it. And dude, I don't want to go anywhere near that show. Like, just no. It shouldn't exist. I'll give the Netflix She-Ra a bit of a pass, despite the creators behind it, just because it's not full-blown woke, from what I heard. I still have no interest in it. But the Thundercats Roar shit I heard was just insulting.
Well, here's an interesting little perspective on the whole thing. I mean, like, what's even the point of bringing back She-Ra and fucking like the 80s cartoons like He-Man and all that kind of crap when we already know that they were just basically fucking 30-minute commercials just to sell the toys anyways, and now we're not falling for that shit anymore. So what's even the point of bringing back these commercials?
I can tell you what the point is.
I got to go to eBay and cancel all my orders of G.I. Joe toys. Just a second.
No, Farty, I can tell you exactly what the point is. It's the fact that they don't have any creative talent working in TV or Hollywood anymore. Like, the entertainment industry is creatively bankrupt because of
No, I got to stop you because one of the shows I want to talk about is Hell on Wheels. It ended a couple years ago. I don't think it could be made in today's current political climate. But this show was badass. Takes place immediately after the surrender at Appomattox. It has an ex-Confederate as the protagonist. And then it has O'Brien from fucking Star Trek in it as the railroad God damn it, what was his name? It was a real guy. He made the railroad, and he was real shifty. He was a shyster.
Oh,
Well,
see,
there's
the
a
thing
few of
is,
those.
Dodge, you're picking the one fruit that's actually ripe out of a pile of fucking fruit that is rotten. Sure, I can come up with a few examples of recent memory as well that are good, but the industry as a whole is creatively fucking bankrupt, which is why they have to pander. And the reason because of that is due to the whole writer guild strike from back in like the early 2000s, and Hollywood just said, "Fuck it, then you're all fired." Like, that's where it all started, and then they decided to pander to politics. It's a 1-2 punch of bullshit. But to answer your question, Farty, that's the reason they're bringing back this shit, is because they're banking on the fact that hopefully people will watch it for nostalgia factor, but the people creating it want to inject politics and agenda into it, and it just ends up destroying the shows, and it's just garbage because they don't know how to fucking write.
Yeah, well, it was just sort of, like you're trying to do things for today's audience and stuff like that. Well, that's pretty simple. Just make one of the characters a fucking leso and the other one a black person. Make it all about those two instead of fucking giant robots fighting fucking aliens.
That's the thing. That's what they've been doing. Like,
Okay,
even comic books.
just so you know, okay, so this is some images from Hell on Wheels. This started in 2011. It ran for 5 years, which is pretty good considering I think they built the railroad in less time than that. So, kind of fits. And it had a good story, good cast. It was just a great show. And it's fairly recent. If you look at another example, The Expanse, amazing sci-fi show. Sci-Fi Channel took it, got rid of it, and then what's his name from Amazon took it over.
Who, Jeff Bezos?
Yeah. He actually loved the show himself, and when they were shopping around for a streaming service, he told them in person that he'll pick up the show.
Now, I'm going to be honest. If I was Jeff Bezos, and me being me, the first thing I would have done is try to contact everybody in Community and get that fucking movie made. TV show Community? Never mind.
I think I remember that show. Was that the web show? That was that was
the one where they're stuck at junior college. Community. It had Troy and Abed and Jeff and Britta and Annie, and it came out in like, what was it, 2000?
Chevy Chase in it at one point, didn't
it? Yeah, for like 3.5 seasons practically.
Until they got fed up with him and told him to fuck off.
Well, that was a beef between Dan Harmon, Mr. I can't fucking stick with anything, and Chevy Chase being the egotist that he is. But he really was one of the best parts of that show.
Well, do you think they can make, in the current climate, a show that puts a positive outlook on an ex-Confederate soldier like Hell on Wheels did?
No,
I don't think they will.
Well, that's the problem with a lot of modern TV shows, is that they're trying to appease to the modern audience.
Oh, this is something I wanted to bring up as well, since Hell on Wheels was HBO, wasn't it?
No, it actually came out on the same network that put out Walking Dead. Is that AMC?
Oh, AMC?
Yeah,
AMC. Okay, for some reason I was thinking it was HBO. So that kind of negates my point, but I'll just make it anyways. If it's an HBO show, yes, you could, because HBO doesn't give a fuck. AMC, they might be able to get away with it, but that's a big if.
I reckon you could, but you'd have to do it a certain way. You'd have to do a couple of seasons of, like, you'd have to really get the character right too to do this too. Do a couple of seasons of like the main character's dark past and leave it at that. Right, but fucking, if you write the character really good so that every cunt fucking really likes the character and all this shit, after like the end of the second season, like, some big event happens and there's that final scene where, like, there's the person that the hero is just going to help, like, sort of laying there against the wall with blood and shit. It's like, oh, hey man, thanks. And then like the hero turns around and goes, yeah, no worries, or gives him the thumb and sort of walks off, kind of thing. That's the point where he can sort of turn around and say, yeah, not bad for an ex-Confederate or something like that, and then walks off and leave everybody just sitting there going, what?
That's actually good.
No, actually, that would be a really good plot twist.
That's well, the point is though, that's kind of what they did, right? So I'm not going to spoil it too much because you guys really should watch this show. But the main story arc from the first couple seasons are pretty simple. During Sherman's march, he went through Mississippi, and that's where this character was from. Bohannon is his name. He was from Mississippi, and they came across his house. They killed his son, raped and killed his wife. The Union soldiers did. And after the war, he's out for revenge. That's the arc for the first 2 seasons. And it kind of makes him somebody you can sympathize with, even if you weren't pro-Confederate. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it humanizes him.
And yes, Farty, you could probably find this show the way you find shows. So I encourage you to watch it. It's a good Western.
I'm actually just sort of more interested about that the rail baron that you mentioned because, well, don't know whether you're aware, but all the different states and stuff like that were actually, like, they weren't state by state. They're actually in, like, large chunks, and people owned those large chunks, and it was the railway system, and people had their own different railways and stuff like that. So if you went from California to New York, you probably get on about 4 or 5 differently owned railway companies just getting from one state to the other, and they were all fucking assholes. So it's interesting because you didn't really narrow it down at all. Like, he was a rail baron and he was an asshole. I was like, that still means all of them. Which one are you talking about? That's what I'm interested in now.
Yeah, no, I looked it up. That way I have his name. I'm surprised I forgot. Thomas Durant. And he was a real person. He embezzled a bunch of money. So the government was issuing like $1 a mile or 10 cents a mile or something for this railroad, right?
And this was back in the 1800s, correct?
Yeah, right after the Civil War. So 1865.
So that'd be quite a bit of money.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And the designers, the engineers built a rail line like you normally would, a straight line from point A to point B, where you would build cities along the way, right? Yeah. Well, Durant got pissed. Why is my railroad so straight? He says. This is a scene in the show. And the guy's like, well, that's the shortest route. He's like, no, I wanted to do this. And he has it like weaving like a snake, just milking the government for every flipping mile.
So a snake wants a physical representation of being a snake.
Pretty much, yeah. That's basically how it went. It was like if you were the mayor of a town, and back in those days, you could set up your own town and all this. And if you were prosperous as the mayor of a town, you collect your own taxes and all this kind of shit, and that's how you'd make your money doing it that way. Now, if you wanted to be prosperous, you needed a train line. Now, cunts were fucking undercutting people left, right, and centre, and the railway baron will go up to your town and say, right, well, it's going to cost you 50 quid to have a railway near your place, and they're like, oh, well, here's 100, guarantee it for me. No worries, I'll take your $100, and I'll guarantee you will absolutely get a railway for you. And then they'll go to the next town and say, oh, he's just giving me $100 for 150. I can guarantee you the railroad. And fuck the other bloke over. So he's just taking your $100. He's got another $150. Neither is you getting a railway.
Yeah, well, no, and it was interesting too. See, the federal government to both rail lines, because one started in California, used Chinese labor, headed east. Durant started east, used the freed slaves and the poor Irish, and headed west. Okay.
Yeah.
All right,
heavy
exclamations
on the freed part of the slaves, because yes, while this was after the Civil War and shit like that, I really highly doubt this bloke was actually paying properly for the black fellas he was employing.
No, and they were down in the cut digging the trenches in the hottest part of the summer. It was horrible work. But the thing is, the government, not only were they paying them for the mileage, but they had the railroad itself got 50 miles on either side of the tracks. That was now the railroads. So the railroads would start selling that off to people to start cities and bring in even more money. I mean, this was just the biggest scam in history, I swear.
If I can backtrack for a quick second, Farty, I'm willing to bet more often than not that those folks were more likely to be indentured servants than anything.
Most probably.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, you can't be a slave, but still, this dude, you still owe him a whole mess of shit that you've got to kind of work off.
Well, no, it's funny. Ain't Jack says, sounds like libertarian free market. Mad would love living back in those days as a libertarian, right? Actually, no.
I don't think you would have made it, Mad Dodge. I think I probably would have shot your ass dead and at high noon.
Be like,
you won't be pulling some Marty McFly, cool? Marty McFly shit now.
Yes, I would totally pull some Marty McFly shit.
You try, but I'm smarter than Biff Tannen.
But the thing is, though, Aunt Jack, that was government intervention into business because it was government subsidized for the railroads to build the line. The railroads didn't spend money to buy property. They ran the natives off and took it.
If anything, that's more socialist than anything else.
But just on the whole thing of laws coming back to biting people in the arse and all this kind of stuff with the whole sure, you might be a freed slave, but you're an indentured servant, which is same shit, different smell. Side topic, fun fact: if you're arrested during the 1930s in Germany for being a gay person and you're on the Holocaust list because yes, you were gassed and shit like that too, then all of a sudden the Americans come along and liberate the place and okay, yes, Mr. Pufty, you can leave Auschwitz prison and all this, and oh no, they've just been arrested for the Bundeswehr because it's actually illegal to be a gay person in Germany. Oh well, back to prison you go.
Anyway, getting back to the TV show.
Yeah, that was a weird segue there, Party. But no, Hell on Wheels is a good show. It ended in 2016, and I doubt they'd be able to make it with today's climate. The Expanse is ongoing. It is a well-made show, but now it has Amazon money behind it, so it better be well-made, right?
Well, here's the thing. Here's the thing. I'm gonna make a quick comparison here. People thought the same idea, and I'm not saying they're remotely the same because the proof is in the product. People said the same shit when Disney bought Lucasfilm. Oh yeah, there's Disney money behind it. This is going to be great. Well, we know how that turned out. So it's a fallacy to think just because a certain company has the money behind a certain product that the product's going to be good. The only way that you keep the product good is by having your voice heard as the person watching the show saying, I like this or I don't like this about it. And that they'll be smart enough, which Bezos is not one of the richest people in the world because he's retarded. When he started his business, he listened to people and what they did and did not like about the Amazon service, which was simply starting as a book selling club, more or less. That's how you get a good show. That's how you keep the show competent, by being humble enough, or if nothing else, smart enough to listen to the fan base saying this is what we do or do not like about the show. That's where Walt Disney Company failed when it came to Star Wars. And this is so far where The Expanse is succeeding because I think they're listening to what the fans have to say.
Yeah, no, and the switchover season has already came out on Amazon exclusively. And it was great. It was a step up in quality. It looked better. It almost looked like a full feature film. Just cut up into, TV episodes that you could binge watch. But Doku, this is a little bit political, but not too bad. They are taking cops off the air. How long has that show been running? That show's been on
like 30 years, right? I didn't even know it was still on past the 1990s. Shit.
Yeah, same.
No, I think it was I think it's either 22 or 28 years old. I think it's 28 years old.
So,
but yeah, it's been on over 2 decades, I can tell you that much.
Yeah, I remember that show coming on, and we used to watch that. The funny thing is, over here in Davenport, Iowa, we would watch it on Channel 18, KWQC. It used to be like Fox or whatever, and stations have changed. The funny thing is, we used to watch that show before we watched Mad TV. I don't know how the fuck that scheduling worked out, but you would see all this kind of shit with the cops go down, and then you'd switch over to Orlando Jones doing Mad TV and shit.
Well, and they also canceled Live PD along with one other show that I've never seen or heard of, but it was another live action police show, which just to point out the unironic hypocrisy of this. The same people that wanted these shows or put pressure on the networks to cancel these shows.
33 seasons.
33. Wow.
Yeah.
So 3 decades then. But the same people that were pushing networks, putting pressure on them to cancel these shows, are the same people who wanted police to have body cams and want police accountability. But then when police get body cams and actually shows like, no, the guy actually was kind of fucked up. The cops are actually in the right. Now they no longer want police to have body cams.
Well, yeah, I think and that's not a political thing. That's just a statement of fact. Mad, you and I, a couple years back when we first met, we talked about this. We talked on, I think it was somebody else's stream, and either you and I bounced this idea back and said, well, yeah, within a few years, they're all going to be whiners and say we don't need body cams. And yet, and here we are in full fruition of why body cams work, because it holds everyone accountable. Body cams, since they have come out, have caught good cops doing dumb shit, bad cops being busted appropriately, good citizens being vindicated, and bad citizens being put away. And
that's the thing. Like, I know people try to make it political, but there's nothing political about holding people accountable for their actions, regardless if you have a badge and a uniform or if you're just an everyday person doing everyday things. Well, sure, people make bad decisions, and they should be held accountable for it. Bad people do bad things. It's kind of in their nature.
Well, it's not a political thing. It's morals and ethics. When you join the police force, just like when you join the military, you pretty much swear an oath to to keep it on the subject of movies and TVs, basically pull a RoboCop to uphold the law, serve the public trust, and all the prime directives and shit. And down the road, you as a person wear down because you are human, and unlike RoboCop, and you can fuck up or you can become even better. You do make the choices. You morally and ethically make the choices to either continue to be virtuous or to be flawed. And that's a morals and ethics thing. That has it's only the people in positions of power that make it political, just like they did in RoboCop, and especially in the TV show Prime Directives, which Farty, if you've seen that, that's pretty good. I think it's pretty good. You and I are along the same lines of how we find our TV. We pulled the old Jack Sparrow. But why is all the rum gone? Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. And and so that's what it breaks down to. So right now, with the Cops TV program having been on for 33 seasons, according to Wikipedia, and this is one of the things that Wikipedia is actually accurate about for some fucking reason. It's a moral and ethics decision to whether or not to continue a show about a certain format, which I think most of us thought, shit, that's been on for 33 years. I thought it ended like after 10 years. How long does something stay on? I mean, I would say shit, only The Simpsons has been on longer than this. But my point is the format of the show, has it finally run its course? I think by now, regardless of what's going on, when I say these words and we are all conversing in the world, in America, in Britain, or Australia, or wherever else, yeah, that format has really gone the way of the dodo, but people still watch because there's that, and anything that they watch any TV show for, because there's something about that TV show, about that format that continually gets their attention, and it can gain new viewers from old viewers. So there's nothing political about it. It's just, I hate to say this, but it's just the nature of the beast and how we.
Well, the thing is, I haven't seen a statement regarding this. But I'd be curious, because the only thing I am aware of is that there was a lot of pressure on networks to cancel essentially live PD shows, which you don't really need in the age of social media and body cams. So right. I do know there was pressure from the usual suspects, the outrage mob, to get these shows canceled because cops are bad. I'm more
didn't do nothing flying off a bridge and shit.
Yeah, I'm more curious if the networks actually decided to go ahead and cancel these shows simply because they weren't being profitable anymore. I could understand.
I would think that would be the biggest thing. It's like I just said, how long does a show keep running because of the format? you know, when, and I think, are we all old enough to remember pre-internet culture?
Yep.
I know Farty and I are.
Well, yeah. Again, and that's kind of my point. When you live in the age of social media, everybody essentially has a small mini.
He's going to say a small camera in their phone and sticking their noses where it doesn't belong. I'm guessing that's what he's
You kind of, yeah, you kind of lose your shtick a little bit. Like most people are going to go to like Twitter or LiveLeak or YouTube to find stuff. They're not going to be watching Cops.
What's that? What's
by
that
the time
one?
it hits
What's
Cops,
that one
it's old
website?
news.
World Star, some stupid shit like that.
World Star Hip Hop. Good God, that website.
Okay, but that's not my point, really. My point is you start with the older shows. You could just brush them off, right?
Yeah.
Simple. What's next? Law and Order. I don't care for that show, so go ahead and cancel it. As far as I'm concerned.
But
my wife likes that show.
Ice-T being how he is, he wouldn't. He'll keep that show on because he's a whiny bitch.
Sorry, go ahead, Dave.
No, what I was going to say, regardless, is you're making a valid point there, Dodge. Is again, it goes back to everything that I've said and everything that Doku has said. When is enough, and how long does a show have to keep fucking running?
Yeah. How many traffic stops do you really need to see? You know, how many cunts with a coin bag in their pocket? You know, oh shit. Yeah. How many? We already know that they're not going to show any cunt getting shot. They're not going to show the police shooting anybody. They're not going to show any murder scenes and all this kind of stuff. All the really good shit you're not going to see, and it's only this one select group of activities that they'll actually show you.
Well, you know, and that's the funniest thing, Farty, is that with the advent of YouTube and channels such as YouTube, BitChute, Daily Motion, whatever else, we don't need to be watching TV.
That's right.
You know, and even funnier is the advent of digital media, mainly being DVDs. You know, and I'm going to segue a little bit to the left here. You know, kind of like doing a NASCAR thing here, turning left. I don't barely watch TV. I fucking can't stand it because at least, and I'm not saying this mad to be disrespectful, but Farty and I are old enough to remember you used to be able to get about 24 to 26 minutes of a TV show and maybe 4 minutes or less of commercials to where you now barely get maybe 20 minutes of a TV show. We're that old. And why would you want to watch fucking commercials that, you know, happen, what is it, every 5 minutes now and then run for 3 minutes? Who gives a shit? We don't want to watch that, which is why we pirate stuff or we'll buy the physical format on a DVD, Blu-ray, because we want to keep it and we want to watch it when it's available to us. And then, of course, there's the advent of streaming services, and we all know how that came out. And that's going back to talking about The Expanse, shows that get the boot. Apparently, Firefly doesn't fucking count for some reason. But they get the boot from network TV, and something like Amazon can pick it up, put it on a streaming service, get the old fans, and gain a bevy of new fans. That's real progress. That's intelligent. That's good progress. So TV is becoming an outmoded form of entertainment to an extent. We don't want to sit around and be fucking couch potatoes. We're not watching the fucking we're not the McFly family in the 50s watching shit where we have someone say, hey, I've seen this. This is a rerun. Well, what the hell is a rerun? We're not that generation anymore. And people, and the flip side to this is it's made everybody emotionally, attention spans are basically, you know, shorter than the wing flaps of a hummingbird. I think everybody else left.
No, Doku dropped out. I think Mad passed out.
Mad is like, yeah, Mad must be passed out. So is this now the Dade and Farty show? I'm good with that.
There was something I was going to say along there. Something along those lines, but I can't fucking remember now.
You'll remember in 5 minutes when we're talking about something else.
Yeah, pretty much.
You're like, oh yeah, that's what he meant. So we're talking about TV shows. Farty, what's some of the stuff you like and why?
Well, it's a similar thing. Yeah, like I haven't really watched TV as such. Oh, that's right. Yeah, the guys from the Top Gear remind me about that. Yes, similar. Like I haven't watched actual TV in almost a decade now because there's so
Right.
much shit either on YouTube or on streaming services or on fucking pirate services or anywhere and everywhere. Like if I'm not on YouTube, I'm basically on Discord or a stream.
Right.
Fucking so, and the guys from Top Gear have already said it too in an interview when they were asked about, oh yeah, is it weird going off to Amazon? And they said no, it seems like a perfectly natural progression because they did say basically the same thing as you said, is that like, you know, normal commercial TV, the way that we used to view media and all this kind of stuff is not economically viable. It's already moved on, and regardless of what the copyright rules and all this kind of stuff saying, more and more people are consuming their media on digital format, whether it be on like a streaming service or whether they buy it in a, you know, a physical media or something like that. But that's also going by the wayside. The next natural progression in the industry is to go onto the internet, and that's the reason why that they took the Grand Tour on the Amazon. You know, they took it up with them when they got the offer because, well, that's their leg up, and they're pioneers in the new industry now, where mainstream is going on to where we used to be.
Yeah. And speaking of that, I've been watching Stargirl, and when the time comes to talk about it, I'll tell you how much I like it. But that is the first show, and it's technically not in the Arrowverse. It's part of after every Crisis on Infinite Earths and all that mess. But it's a web show, and it's got strict creative control by Jeff Johns, the guy who created the character. And I said, hell, I didn't even know the show was out until I just ran across it on certain sites, and somebody says, hey, have you watched Stargirl yet? And I said, what the hell are you talking about? And they're now 5 episodes in, but it's a web show, which means they have more flexibility to do what they want, because I've watched the first 5 episodes, and there is some swearing, there is some adult, you know, what we would used to be considered adult content back in the 80s that these fucking kids do now, and it's like nothing to them. And it's like, you couldn't get away with this unless it was on a web. You know, it's not vulgar, but it's just like very specific point. You know, there's an example of one of the characters who was in her backstory was dating the popular guy, sent like what kids do, they, you know, on which they shouldn't do, is they'll send like a topless pic, and then somehow it gets all over the school. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge on that bullshit. And then her family finds out, is so pissed off and embarrassed by her. And they're a very traditional Latino family, and they're really good characters. But, you know, she can't go to school without being called a slut. And it's like, these kids don't even know what this term means. They use it just like you and I, Farty, would, you know, if we get pissed off, we call each other wanker or some vulgar name. And it's not what, you know, and we're just doing it to be assholes to each other. But we're using those terms out of context, and they use the term slut out of context to basically slut shame the girl, who goes on to be one of the secondary superheroes in the movie, and they've really done a good job with these characters. But that's my point, is going to such things like web services as opposed to terrestrial TV or even fucking HBO.
All right, Enoid, $5. So the world's on fire. We're gonna talk about TV. My brother, I feel like you're selling out. No, man.
We don't want to talk politics for once. We want to talk about TV. Everybody needs a mental break. And Pinoid, this was my idea because I wanted people to talk about something they love and their perspectives on it. So
yeah, and if I talk about politics, like the coming war right now, it's just gonna, I just don't want to
get burned out. So we're not ignoring the subject. We're choosing not to talk about it because it's a mental health issue. And I'm sorry, it really is. I don't know how people can watch this shit and not have a mental meltdown. So what I was saying is, like you were saying, Farty, we put stuff on web episodes or the internet. Not only do we get away with more because it's more like, I think it was Doku saying basically, you take a movie, or you or Mad Dodger Doku said, it's basically you're taking a full movie and chopping it down into parts. You can't do that anymore on regular TV without, everybody sticking the FCC and everybody sticking their nose up somebody else's butt. And that's not what TV is supposed to be. TV used to be, there's always been corporate sponsorship. Don't get me wrong. But TV used to be, you had the capability of having good ideas put out there for people to see, make a little bit of cash, get a following, and then it ran its course. But people grew up with it and loved it. And of course, you get the nerd, and all this shit. EBS used to have a lot more flexibility with ideas, and now it's very restrictive. And that really is because what I said, people with the money stick their nose where it don't belong. So going to such a thing as a web service gives them a little more freedom.
Yeah, that's true. But there is the point where the FCC, they really have no reason to exist anymore. So as their existence starts to wind down, you're going to see them start to lash out at the television companies and try and keep themselves relevant.
Well, you have to remember the FCC is not just for TV shows. It's really primarily terrestrial radio. And the average person, I don't listen to radio. I listen to CDs. I actually still have a CD player in my car that works great. And if by the rare occasion I don't want to put in a physical disc, I will pop in my fucking iPod, which still works somehow, before Steve Jobs died, thankfully. And I will listen to what I want to listen to when I want to listen to it. But the FCC basically exists to say what you can and cannot say and collect, and to basically make sure that there is not one ring to rule them all, which, well, we've already seen how that goes.
Well, there's an interesting little side thing on that too, is that there is a necessity for free public radio, public TV broadcasting, that kind of thing, for emergency services sakes and things like that. Just a good example, the beginning of the year, the bushfires and stuff like that. A lot of people are getting told to evacuate via the radio, things like that. So you still need that kind of shit because of that reason. Now, what will actually end up happening is the FCC is probably going to either get into shit or become a laughing stock, one of the two, because they'll either do nothing or they'll realise that the massive hole in that specific element of it is so fucking huge and no one's saying shit about it. And that is, right, okay, so we still need the TVs and the radios because of emergency broadcasting. What about people who are listening to podcasts and listening to shit on radio via Bluetooth in their cars? You can't break into that kind of shit. So that's going to be the cause of a lot of people's deaths, and I reckon that'll end up being an inquiry afterwards, going, well, how come you didn't do anything about this before? And it'll be like, I don't know, it's an inside job, I guess.
Well, a fair rebuttal to that would be you can't really blame the FCC for that. If you think about it, if everybody wants to talk about TV and for the longest time I liked The Walking Dead, I really got out of it after Negan entered the picture because it really did get stale. It was predictable, but it would be one of those things that were we to become The Walking Dead, everything else would go down except for most likely ham radios, and that's why the FCC has basically said we exist within a certain function, and we have to allow certain things to happen because you and I, and not a single one of us on this panel right now would ever be surprised of how things get. We live in a world where we have 15 different means of getting hold of somebody, and it always cross connects somehow. Yet at the same time, we still don't have a clue what's going on. I have a cell phone. I have a home phone. Yeah, ha, ha, ha. It's still on the wall, whatever. And my mom has a cell phone and a home phone number, a home phone. My daughter's the same thing. You can't get a hold of one, you get a hold of another. And if you can't get a hold of those two, you go on to Facebook, you use Messenger because somehow they'll still get it. That's why the FCC allows things. They still have to be around to control that. We still have the capability, and I hate saying it, and I'm not for the FCC, but I'm saying they exist to make sure that we have the capability in case shit happens. Because one thing goes down, the other things goes down, and then you're really talking 1960s era's communication, which is fucking ham radios and the fucking hard line in your house. Cell phones ain't going to do shit in the long run.
Well, no, that's funny you bring up ham radio because I actually was looking at getting one and getting the stupid little license just so they're cool because you could talk to the International Space Station and shit with them. So it would be cool to have, you know what I mean? Just as a hobby. But they're expensive, man.
Life should be that cool.
Okay, can you guys hear that in the background?
That's a train, isn't it?
I'm going to have to go, guys.
All right. Well, pop back in when you can.
All right. See you.
Okay, so getting back to web episodes, I found out about Stargirl about a week ago, and I've already watched the first 4 episodes. Episode 5 came out this week. And so we get back to the subject at hand, the TV show subject at hand. This show is great, and I'll tell you why this is great. It's a stark contrast to Batwoman. Everything Batwoman did wrong, with the exception of Ruby Rose, Stargirl has gotten right. Now the weirdness to this is Supergirl used to be just like this up until season 4, where people started injecting their personal beliefs and yada 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 and everything else. So Stargirl right now is quite good because it not only respects the past characters, it has a good starting point. It's got a decent cast. Luke Wilson is in this. He's fucking hilarious. And I will repost, if I can find it, one of the best parts of the series so far on Twitter. And it's being done right so far that Batgirl did not, or that Batwoman was not able to do. And again, I'll vehemently have stated, this is not Ruby Rose's fault. I liked Ruby Rose's Batwoman. I think a lot of the storyline and stuff was the creative teams, the directors, and everybody else. They didn't know what the fuck they were doing. Stargirl, however, much like when Supergirl first started, not only had a solid, it's this. They've kept it true to form of what the character is supposed to be, and as of yet, have to take any, tip their toes into modern political bullshit. The best thing about this show, and why I can tell people to watch it, and this is really, you just got to just enjoy this shit. Don't take this shit seriously. It's just good. It's good because there's a dynamic to it that you don't really get to see. Jeff Johns, who created Stargirl, is actually in complete control of the show. And this is the one time I would say, as much as I don't like Jeff Johns, and I think, Jeff Johns, you ever hear this? I think you're a wiener personally, and I'd love to smack you one for some of the shit you've pulled in comics. But because he has executive creative control of Stargirl, his character, Courtney Whitmore, it's being done right. It's being so faithful to the character. It's fun. It's easy to watch, and it shows respect to the characters of the DC Comics universe. Here's the caveat. It does not take place directly in the Arrowverse. It takes place on one of the Infinite Earths. It has a slightly different timeline as history unfolds differently, which, if you know anything about good storytelling, that's not always a bad thing, but that does happen. And Jeff Johns has been able to use characters from past DC Comics appropriately in this current show. And while I think there may be one misstep, which I will talk about later, I don't think it's a big one. It's trying to do something by showing that you can actually have it, and it's not going to be a team of all girls. Now, most of the people on the team with Stargirl are girls, they're teenage girls, they're young ladies. They're doing it right. They're not making it exclusively all women. There's like 1 or 2 guys on the show, and they're basically saying, we know we're on an alternate Earth, we know we have an alternate history, and that shit can unfold differently in the storytelling, but it's really darn good for the 5 episodes that are out so far. If they get a second series, I'd be surprised, because Breck Basinger, I believe, is the daughter of Kim Basinger and Alec Baldwin. I'm going to have to look that up. And Alec Baldwin being how he is, I would not be surprised if she if she stays on with this project for the money that she makes, because it's a webisode, and Amy Smart and Luke Wilson, they're not A-list actors, but they're really good in this, and it's got a lot of great stuff. I really can't sing the praises of the show enough for now, because it is the antithesis of Batwoman and what Batwoman should have been. It should have acknowledged that, yes, Bruce Wayne was Batman, and instead of saying stuff like, well, this, Luke says, the character of Luke Fox says, well, the suit is practically perfect. And God, I don't think Ruby Rose thought anything of this, but the fucking line of, yeah, it'll be perfect when it fits a woman, there's none of that shit in this show. That's the biggest misstep of Batwoman. If you had avoided all that stupid political shit, you'd have a great show. And, and I think for as much as, and I think Doom Patrol avoided that. And so far that's only got 1 season. And I think Titans avoided that and I'm going to express a problem, my concern here. this does not make me a racist. I think that the woman that is playing, let me look her name up here real quick. Anna Dollop or something like that, who's playing Starfire. She's fucking great. Here's my problem with her, not as a person. Anna Diop. She's not orange. Starfire is supposed to be orange. And I think in the first part of that season, they underutilized her ability, and her origin is not the best. Now that they're into season 2, she should start being way more Corianders of Tamaran and being a shit ton more orange. I mean, look how wonderful a job they did with in Guardians of the Galaxy. What was the actress's name that played Gamora? I can't think of it right off the bat.
I'm not sure.
But you know who I'm talking about. So she's a black woman, and she was still green. You know, the character is supposed to be green. Well, Starfire is supposed to be orange, and Anna Diop is a damn good actress. She's actually quite good for this role. And thankfully, they started getting rid of that fucking ugly ass outfit and that curly hair because it did not do her any justice. But she should be more orange. So for all the flaws that Titans has, it's still trying to adhere to the spirit of what Titans is. Doom Patrol is trying to adhere to what the spirit of Doom Patrol is. Stargirl is trying to and succeeding. That's kind of true, Pinoid. Sometimes people don't learn their names. But Stargirl is trying to stay true to what Stargirl is as a character and the history of that character. Supergirl started out that way, and by season 4 got too political and lost it. Batwoman lost it right out of the fucking gate. I wish I would have written Batwoman because I would have fucking done it better. And
all I know about Batwoman is watching the trailer and doing a review on it, and that trailer was dog shit.
That's not Ruby Rose's fault. That's fucking DC's fault for allowing that shit trailer.
I wouldn't let my kids watch that show if they were in trouble.
Well, they shouldn't, because they shouldn't, mainly for the fact is it's too much on the gay, and they make that's the single trait that they bring out for Batwoman. Oh, she's gay.
I don't remember her being even bisexual, much less.
Well,
gay.
she is openly gay, and Kate Kane, the character they're basing it off of, is openly gay in the comics. The comics did it better because that was not her single trait. That was not all of who she is. I tell my daughter the same thing, and I tell my other stepdaughter the same thing. Yeah, you're openly gay. That's fine, but that's not all who you are. That is a small trait about your entire personality and who you are.
Okay, you got to correct me here, because I'm thinking back to, I know not the best Batman movie ever, but Batman and Robin, where they introduced
Batgirl.
Yeah, she wasn't gay, wasn't she? Did she have a thing for Robin?
Character, Mad Dodge, not the same character. Batgirl Barbara Gordon is not the same as Batwoman Catherine Kane.
Oh, for fuck you, DC, just fuck you.
No, that's on you, buddy. I understand that you're not a comic reader, which is why I'm educating you. I completely understand, but that's on you for not knowing the difference. But that's okay, because there's a lot of things that you know that I have no fucking clue about, and I'd rather ask you. So one of the biggest examples of how to do the character right, if you watch the DC animated movie Batman Bad Blood, they do Catherine Kane, Batwoman, perfectly. That's exactly how they should have done this. Ruby Rose was perfect for this role. The problem is, and they didn't make her Mary Sue like Rey from fucking Star Wars, I can tell you that. The problem is, they went too heavy on the gay. They really, really fucking pushed it. And they were pushing this shit on TV to where little kids could watch it. Now, my daughter and my stepdaughter would tell you, being teenagers, yeah, that's not for a kid to watch. And I said, well, aren't you gay? And they said, yeah, but I made my choice as a teenager when I was, X amount of years old, and I knew who I was and what I wanted to do with my life. All right, fair enough, good. When you focus on a single trait of a character and make it the premise of anything, whether it be music or show or movie, whatever you have, whatever format, it not only derails the character and ruins it, it wastes every single opportunity for a character to have growth as a character, and loses possibilities for story arcs and for other characters come in and do everything. Stargirl does not do this. Her biggest thing is she still thinks that the original Starman is her dad. Now, he may be, he may not. I don't know. I couldn't tell you. But they basically got it. This is her character. This is what she looks like. This is how she behaves. It's pretty much if you had Claire from Heroes in this TV show. That was great. That's what Stargirl is without the Wolverine healing ability that Claire had. Supergirl started out the same way as I'm Clark. I'm Superman's cousin, and that's how, and nobody knows this, but I need to forge my own identity because I have my support system. I have my family, and I have all these people around me who love me, and I'm going to have a mentor in this character and this and become my own person. They did that up until season 4, and as I said before, they fucked it over. So this is why I like Stargirl. That is my comparison to Supergirl. And Supergirl, you need to get your shit together. And I know that everybody's with the Wuhan flu, everything's on hold. Fucking get over it and get back to work. And Batwoman failed as a TV show because that shows the exact polar opposite of Stargirl. Here's the one thing I will say for Batwoman, and it's similar to the Brie Larson argument that I have with people. They continually love to bash Brie Larson because she's personally a bitch, and she was in Captain Marvel. That's fine. I try to tell people to remember that the character or the person doing something is only as good as the script and the directing allows when it comes to TV and movies. If you watch Ruby Rose's Batwoman and anything else besides Batwoman, she's great. In the crossover Elseworlds, she's good. In the Crisis on Infinite Earths, for as much as that 5-parter should have been at least 10 parts and it sucks, she was good. There was character growth when she met the Batman from Earth 99, which was basically which was Kevin Conroy as the voice of Batman in physical form being Batman, was supposed to be the Batman from Frank Miller's The Dark Knight Returns somehow, or Kingdom Come, whatever. I'm not going to get into details. This is shit people should look up and find out for themselves. She saw what she could become if she continually stayed angry, didn't have a support system, didn't have allies, and didn't grow as a person. They built the character up in these little side episodes, and then they completely trashed it on her main show because of different writers. The same argument can be made for Brie Larson. If you watch everything she's ever done before she got her first Oscar, before she did Captain Marvel, and before current year. If you see Brie Larson in certain things like Scott Pilgrim, The United States of Terra, and even Community, with that TV show Community that I love to talk about, she's fine because it's good writing, it's good directing, and she can follow cues. And that's basically that's essentially it. That is why so far Stargirl is the polar opposite of Batwoman, and why it's worth a watch, and it's something that Supergirl used to be and will never be again because it's gone too much into the Batwoman territory.
$2 super chat from Pinoid, thank you. He sent his kid Sun Tzu in jail, and the jail took it away. That's really weird because I've heard of people being in prison and reading all that shit, like from the prison library. That's really weird. They should just scan the book usually to make sure you didn't hide anything in it, and then hand it over. That's odd.
And what's that about?
Oh, Sun Tzu, The Art of War?
Yeah, I know, but what's Pinoid referring to?
He sent the book to his son who's serving time, and the jail won't let his son have it.
Well, that's fucking... I'm sorry, but that's stupid. Just because your son's in jail for whatever reason does not mean he's denied the ability to actually read something and learn. That's garbage. Sorry, buddy.
Well, no, and I think the problem with the modern comic book stuff is they are trying to placate to a certain crowd. Gotham wasn't really trying to do that, and that's a pretty good show, or at least was. I watched the first 2 seasons.
Well, I think the reason you and I are going to disagree on Gotham is basically for one simple fact: every supervillain that's in that movie didn't appear until Batman was Batman. And there's a theory that is out there is that did Joe Chill, who killed Batman's parents, create Batman? Or did Batman simply become into existence because of what happened and then became a force of unbelievable power and then basically would say to the criminal element, I challenge you, come at me? Because there are some cases in stories across time and space that are not superhero based, that you have a protagonist, not necessarily a good guy, but the protagonist, the main character of the story, whether it be a man or woman or whatever, that something happens to them and they arise to a great amount of power. And so what that does is it creates the antagonist or opposition to that power, to challenge it, to deem whether it's worthy or not. An example of this is, and I'll use the movie format to keep on topic here, but Clash of the Titans with Harry Hamlin from back in 1980. If you don't know the movie, I'll explain it. For the general audience or who's ever listening to this in the future, it's an interpretation of the birth and life of Perseus, the son of Zeus, and that he has to go. That his mom Danae was killed, and he was basically raised by him. I believe. No, she was cast away, from what I understand, and he was raised by her, and she died. And as a young man, he travels across what was known as the whole world back then, and he's given challenges to see whether or not he's worthy of marrying the Princess Andromeda. And so Perseus comes to power, and so what happens is opposition comes into play. Calibos, being the other so-called suitor that was rejected by Andromeda, tests Perseus. And I hate using the Batman Joker analogy because I don't like the Joker, but that's basically what it is. Or it's the Spider-Man versus the Green Goblin. It's that kind of thing. It's the one side and the other. It's the chicken or the egg, basically. And so what happens is Perseus has to save Andromeda, at least in this movie, in this interpretation of the adventures of Perseus, from the Kraken, which was sent forth to destroy the home of Andromeda. I can't remember the island right now. Because Hera is continually jealous of Zeus's affairs with mortal women. Well, I kind of don't blame Hera on that one, but whatever. So that's basically Perseus comes into power as the protagonist. He is given a mentor. He is given, it's basically Star Wars if it was, which is what Star Wars itself is originally based on, Greek mythology or Greek beliefs or Greek history and legend. And he gets his mentor. He gets his sword and his shield and his helmet, the force, so to speak, to do what he needs to do. And he gets Bubo, the mechanical owl. And all these gifts are from gods like Artemis and Athena and everybody else. So when Perseus comes into power to save Andromeda and wants her hand in marriage, Calibos comes back into power by way of Hera to say, yes, I don't want this person to succeed. You must challenge them to see if they are worthy, and you must try to win. That's exactly what a good character does.
You know what?
A lot of modern stories do not have this because they don't want to have it.
Yeah, here's the thing. If they want to redo something and reimagine it, how about you do Hercules, but instead of making it cheesy, you make it good?
I think that's where the television format, and I'll say television loosely as a format, comes into play as opposed to movies. Hercules, the Legendary Journey, and Xena Warrior Princess were reimagining of Hercules, but I believe Xena was a completely original creation. Hold on a second. And so they were able to tell stories that nowadays would be part of a saga. Probably be 5 or 6 movies. They told it in nearly 100 episodes of each show. and they did it vastly more superior because they had the television format to basically break it down into episodes as opposed to the full movies. That is one of the many problems that we have as a society, is that everybody wants it now, and that's not the way it works. For as much as you want it to happen now, there's going to be that oppositional force that says you have to slow down and wait.
Yeah, and the thing is, like, if they wanted to do a good comic book TV show, you know what I think would be good? And I know they tried the whole X-Men idea. Heroes was pretty much X-Men, right?
Yeah, in a way, it was about genetic mutation, but they didn't adhere to the formula of that mutants are feared and hated throughout the world, and are actually known. It's along the same lines, though.
I would take the X-Men, but choose a character. And yes, I'm biased; it's my favorite character. But I would choose
not Wolverine. Boring.
No, see, pick a character they don't really do much with. Gambit. And started in New Orleans. Go. I want to hear Gambit's backstory. I want to see that shit. I want to see him gambling on the fucking riverboats. I want to see that shit.
I don't think that necessarily would work, mainly because people don't know who he is. I wouldn't really have a problem with it. I'm fine with obscure characters getting a little bit of showtime. I think the biggest obstacle to that is that there's already a solidified history. And if they wanted to adapt it, just really adapt the Gambit solo series and work from there. Hell, you could even throw in, speaking of the X-Men and the TV show X-Men cartoon, you could even throw in bits where they had the episodes that focused on Gambit and his ex Belladonna and the Thieves Clan and the Assassins Clan as part of the backstory and history, and the tithe and the offerings and all that kind of stuff. See, I mean, that's stuff that could easily be adapted if done properly into the right audience. There's always an audience for something. The thing is, you and I both know you have to have that fat cash to get it done. It's like I tell my brother Andrew, if he doesn't like something, why doesn't he stop bitching and start writing scripts and sending them out?
Well, true. And me and Doku are writing a series of short stories right now, like an anthology series. So we are putting our money where our mouth is, so to say. We'll try and keep everybody updated on that as it starts to progress. We were going to do a graphic novel, but we're having a hard time finding the artist. So I think a series of short stories co-authored would work a little bit better to start with. But they were going to do a Gambit movie, right? And that kind of fell to the wayside. Why not reinvest that into a Gambit show and choose something like the CW?
I honestly wouldn't trust the CW with your life, mainly because the CW has the problem of taking TV shows that are poorly adapted on a certain level. I hate Riverdale with a vengeance, and here's why. The characters that they use in that show have been utterly bastardized. They are not even remotely what Archie, Betty, Veronica, Jughead, Reggie, Moose, Midge, and everybody else that I know from the comics are supposed to be. Now, the flip side to that is I like Sabrina. I like the Sabrina show, with the Chilling Adventures of Sabrina, I believe it's called, because that comes sadly from, and I say sadly because it's not been completed, that comes from a comic book series which was fucking great, that went along in the same veins of the life and the afterlife with Archie, where it's basically a Walking Dead type scenario, but it's not the same thing. And the Chilling Adventures of Sabrina is good because it goes back into the Angel, Buffy, Charmed territory. And that's not something, and I'm not talking about the reboot Charmed with all the black chicks because fucking people don't know how to do shit right. It's because we really haven't had a show like that focused on a female protagonist dealing with basically mystic or demonic or religious themes and tones in quite some time.
Didn't
I actually like that show
Charmed-
as opposed to Riverdale.
Didn't Buffy and Charmed run at the same time? Like one overlap, like Buffy overlapped with Charmed. Charmed came out towards the tail end of Buffy, the beginning of Angel, right?
Yeah, Buffy came out first, and Angel followed, and then by that time, Charmed had come out. And I would suggest everybody, if you can, listening to this, feel free to go watch V Infuso's Charm take, or if you can hunt it down, look for Obscurus Lupa. Her real name is Allison Pregler. Look for her Charmed stuff, because she is, and she does the old show and she does the new show, and I think she explains stuff quite well. I would defer to those people about certain things because they are more vested interest than I am about those. Now, between that and the Chilling Adventures of Sabrina, we had basically, what was that show? HBO. It was on HBO, I believe. It was True Blood. And for as much as I think that show could have ended vastly better, it was really one of the last, prior to the Chilling Adventures of Sabrina, one of the last female-led supernatural type shows. And they did it quite well, and they stuck with mythologies, and they tried to do something fresh. And of course,
Yeah,
that was actually based on a book. So there you go.
You know what sucks? True Blood, I didn't really watch it. But I was down in Louisiana, right? At Shreveport, which is their backup filming location. And they film out of this bar over on Industrial Avenue. And I was going to go to the bar and run Vampire the Masquerade over my cell phone or whatever, you know, with the regular people we play Vampire with. And then COVID happened and I couldn't do shit. They shut everything down. I had to fly home early and shit.
Your arms must have been tired.
Yeah, totally. No, you know what's funny? So on the flight there to Louisiana, right, I had bought this brand new bag. And I thought it was just a duffel bag. Right. No, this fucker had wheels and a little handle. So I'm running around the airport on the way there with this duffel, carrying the son of a bitch everywhere. And then I get to my dad's house, and I'm like looking at the bag. I'm like, this motherfucker has a handle and wheels. I am the biggest idiot in the world.
I've got to ask you, how did you not notice that from part one?
I was like half asleep. I flew out on the Redeye, actually. So I was like half asleep and shit. And I made sure not to drink or smoke a bowl or nothing because I didn't want to be intoxicated on the flight.
You're a redneck, aren't you?
No, I just didn't want to be drunk on the flight and get kicked off or something. That shit would suck.
Yeah, that would be terrible. No, I could understand that if you're half awake and you're trying to catch a flight, you're not immediately going to pay attention to the aesthetics of your luggage. But I would think that would be one of the things that that would catch your eye primarily because, like, oh, it's designed a certain way, and the wheels are usually prevalent within your line of sight to say, oh yes, I can pull the handle up and stroll this down instead of breaking your freaking back.
I know, you would think, but these wheels are kind of hidden, but it's a good bag. On the way back, it was much easier. I just rolled the son of a bitch everywhere.
Well, that's good. I mean, I'm not chiding you for anything because you're talking to a guy that I had to change my tire because I think prior to everything starting, we were talking about how a bunch of people are still being pansies about stuff. And I had to change my own tire, and I found I found a nail in my brand spanking new tire. And the irony was, it was one of those nails that is pretty much self-driving. I think they call them self-driving nails or something like that. And it was just the tip. And somehow it got in there on its way from the manufacturer to me. And had it been a millimeter or a fraction of a millimeter further, it would have blown the whole tire out. So I got it popped out, and I'm looking at it, and I had already glossed and shined the tire with the tire gloss, you know, it's the oil base, not the water based shit. The blackout stuff or the whatever. And I'm looking at this thing. I said, fucking son of a bitch. This is like a self-driving screw. And it's like, how the fuck, this get in my tire of all things? And so I had already glossed it, let it dry a little bit, and then I started pouring the soap and water and make sure there wasn't going to be any bubbles. And lo and behold, because I was in such a hurry to get that tire on there because my other one was gone, I didn't notice that minor detail. And that'd be one of the things that you think you would pay attention to, especially since it's going on your goddamn car. So I'm not going to chide you for not knowing about the wheels on your luggage, because I'm guilty of not paying attention to minute details myself.
Yeah, but okay, so the Stargate thing I wanted to talk about.
Yes, let's get the Stargate. We're gonna have fun with this.
Yeah, they had MGM is not treating this property correctly at all. It is their second largest franchise property.
What's their first largest in comparison?
James Bond.
Okay, so now we basically have a comparison of what is their first and second largest franchise and why.
And
for the folks out there listening, so what are we comparing it to? It's compared to this.
Well, and here's the thing. Okay, so they're treating it like the redheaded stepchild of the company, and they refuse to sell it off. So what happened is about 2 years ago, they started a website, and they're like, look, we're working on this small budget show. If you subscribe to Stargate Command, you get all the Stargate shows previously released, and you get access to this new short project. And if this short project works, we're going to try and bring back a real show. Okay. And the project was mainly based off the movie instead of the established lore from the show. I think that's where they went wrong. But that's not even what I'm talking about. They canceled it after 1.5 to 2 years. I actually use this website. It's gone. Because they want to focus on their YouTube channel. Are you kidding me? I have a YouTube channel. You're
okay. Back up for a minute here. I am not the biggest Stargate fan. I've seen bits and pieces, and I know the majority. But correct me if I'm wrong. But isn't the original series actually a continuation of the Kurt Russell movie?
Yes and no.
It's a soft reboot.
Yes, they changed a couple things, but they had, they got somebody great that looks like fucking, what's his name, Spader or whatever. The guy was on Boston Legal as well.
James Spader.
Yeah, they got somebody that looked just like him to play his character. They had a couple crossover characters, and they went out and got, MacGyver to do it. And
Richard.
Go ahead.
Richard Dean Anderson is the actor's name.
Hey, MacGyver sounds cooler. He can fix Stargate.
Yeah, that's all well and good. That's all well and good. But people that hear this, people are like people when they watch horror movies. When they hear stuff like this, they're literally yelling at you, knowing that you can't hear them say, "His name is Richard Dean Anderson." God damn it! That's just how humans are. I've been guilty of that. I've watched your show as just a viewer, and I've said oftentimes, knowing you can't hear me, I'm like, Dodge, you idiot! It's this person. This person. What are you on? God damn it! And I'm thinking, why am I yelling at my computer?
Okay, fair enough. But it was kind of a soft reboot, and if you look at it, SG1 went 11 years. Then you have Atlantis, and then you have SU. So, I mean, there's a lot of stuff to build off of there. And they're just scrapping it all for their YouTube channel. That means they don't care about Stargate. They don't care about the fans. Because there's still Stargate-only conventions going on and stuff. There's a big fan base for this.
Normally, though, that they don't care about the franchise of the fans, or are they just under management that is basically essentially stupid?
It could be the latter, but I mean, this is MGM. This company's been around since movies have been around, right?
Yeah, MGM is one of the first studios ever to help make movies in America. But my point is, to use a phrase, regimes change, objectives change, things change. to paraphrase the Avengers in it's basically, if we sign this accord, we could be prevented from helping some people that genuinely need help, or we could be sent to places that we shouldn't be sent. That's essentially what I'm getting to, is that MGM is a company, and the people that originally owned it, that had James Bond take off, they're long since gone. So is the current regime of people running MGM dealing with Stargate, a beloved franchise of sci-fi fans? And I'll admit, I'm not a Stargate guy, and I have absolutely jack shit against it. It's not my cup of tea, but I would never berate somebody for liking it, because that's just like people saying to me, well, I don't know how you can like the original Star Trek. Well, okay, we're going to have a fight. Or how can you like Cowboy Bebop? And it's like, well, you know what? Let's not get into that. But my point is the current regime fundamentally ignorant or stupid with what they're doing with their properties? That's something people need to take notice of, take heed of, because essentially, while you're very passionate about Stargate, which you are, I would not want you to get bent out of shape over people who are running the show being morons.
No, I get your point. My wish actually would be that they sold it to a company that could handle it better. Okay, so what's the sci-fi landscape right now? The Expanse, the Star Trek shows, plural, and what? The Mandalorian, is that still going on, or was that a miniseries? What's Star Wars doing right now?
I believe that the Mandalorian is still going on. Star Wars, and I'm not being here to be correcting you. Star Wars, specifically speaking, is science fantasy. It's not science fiction along the lines of Stargate or Star Trek, or Babylon 5, or anything along those lines, or even Farscape. I would say the big five in franchises in regards to science fiction are, at least to the modern day public, are Star Trek, Stargate, Babylon 5, Farscape, and probably Planet of the Apes. So that's where I want to distinguish between the two, to make comparisons between, or to even mention Star Wars, is that science fantasy. But yeah, the Mandalorian is still out there.
Okay, well, I was trying to talk about the current franchises that are still running.
Well, yeah, those are the ones that are currently on the landscape. It's really, and in third place, I would definitely put Stargate, but it's really Star Trek and Star Wars, and they're fucking things up so badly.
Yeah, and okay, so now, well, the Expanse is jumping up there. They're calling it Game of Thrones in space, and for good reason.
I hope not.
I know.
No, I don't want it to end badly. That's what I'm saying. I want something like the Expanse, which has gotten a second chance that Firefly didn't get, to end well when the time comes. I think it's an insult to call something like the Expanse the Game of Thrones in space.
Hey, I'm wearing my Firefly shirt, so I'm repping Firefly today. I've only seen one episode, though. I got it from a geek box.
We don't get your avatar on everything shows what we see. We don't get to see what fashionable items you have, like I do when I change mine by wearing my Cowboy Bebop hat, which people give me shit for being 45. Well, you're wearing Cowboy Bebop, you're a poser. And it's like, bitch, I was watching Cowboy Bebop before you were born. Anyway.
But I think right now would be a great time for somebody like not Amazon. Amazon has The Expanse. Disney has Star Wars. I think Netflix should pick up Stargate.
Why?
I wouldn't say Netflix.
Has, we forgot one, Seth MacFarlane's, because I don't watch it doesn't mean it's not good. What the
Orville is fucking great. I'm waiting for the third season.
Yeah, so and Hulu has
Orville is on everybody's back burner, because they consider that more Star Trek than what Star Trek's doing, but that's kind of on the back burner, considering it's not even, the third season is currently on hiatus because of other shit.
Yeah, true. But no, what I'm saying, though, is the only company without a solid sci-fi franchise right now is Netflix. If I don't count Stranger Things, okay.
Stranger
that's
Things
also-
is nostalgic
that's also-
horror.
Yeah, and God, that should have stopped after one season, but that's for another time.
You know what? I'll agree with Dodge. Give it to Netflix, but only under one condition. Whoever is the director, give them creative independence. If Netflix just acts as the producer, fine. Netflix
Distribution?
is good. Yeah, like as well. Let Netflix produce it. Let them put money behind it. But don't give them creative. Don't give them creative influence over it. Leave that to the director and the writing team. Because anytime Netflix has any type of creative influence, it immediately becomes fucking political. Netflix has already shown they do not give a shit about the IP, and they will twist that shit and warp it to serve a narrative. Just let them be the money behind it.
So we don't get too far off the topic here because we do need to stay on topic. Netflix, when it adapts Japanese material, specifically stuff like Death Note, they don't know what the hell they're doing. And that's why I would not try. That's why I would be very wary of Netflix touching anything unless they were strictly distribution, because I would not want, Stargate, which has coming up on 20-year history with fans through various series, to be touched by people who do not understand it.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree. Like, Netflix has a lot of money. Let them throw the money behind it. Don't let them actually write it. Don't let them direct it.
Everybody say hi to my favorite troll, William. Dodge. Not sure who's more of a loser, Dade or Doku. I'm leaning Dade. Well, the poll will be on.
I would say I am. I would say I'm the biggest loser because I'm 45 years old and I'm ex-military and I have zero debt to my name, and I've banged a black wife for about 20 years and have 2 wonderful daughters, and now I'm married to a South Korean woman who I get to bang every other day if I want. So I'm the biggest fucking loser here.
Actually, see, I'm going to have to say that I'm actually the biggest loser because I lost Who's the Biggest Loser to the Biggest Loser.
Oh, shit. Touche.
Gotcha.
All right, but no, when it comes to Stargate, I would like to see, the way they left SGU, they could restart it right now. Bam. It's ready to go. Matter of fact, scripts
would
are
you want them to even restart it, or would you want them to pick up years later and continue off?
Well, the scripts are made. Like, they're written for an SGU movie. They were promised a movie by Sci-Fi, directly to Sci-Fi,
Well, see, I'm sorry, but I would want Sci-Fi to, not Syfy. I want Syfy to go back to being Sci-Fi and picking up where it left off, because there's continuity. A soft reboot will just be problematic for some people and not problematic for others, but you know how people like to behave about things.
It's just a chaos theory in action of SGU. You throw all these civilians on this weird ship that's on autopilot, and you see what fucking happens. I like that. It's like a scripted reality show in space.
Lost in space, essentially. No, and I'm not talking. I'm pulling my mic up very quickly, close to my face. I want to be very specifically clear. I am not referring to the very cheesy yet excellent Lost in Space from the 1960s, I believe. I am referring to, it would be J.J. Abrams' Lost, which that show sucks, by the way, in space. Do we really want the possibility of Stargate going that route?
I would love to see a polar bear on that ship. I'm kidding, of course.
It could be a space polar bear. There's nothing wrong with that.
Oh my God, no. I know what we do. I'll write it. Okay? SGU, they wake up. They're back on the ship, and they're being hunted by Jason.
Oh, you can fuck right off. Get out of here.
I am a huge Friday the 13th fan. I've got 3 of the 5 masks that I want that are fully functional from NECA. And I would even say to you, Mad Dodge, bite me. Burn in hell for that comment. I love you, but no.
That is a cursed comment. That is a cursed comment, Dodge. No, like you're in timeout. Go sit in the corner.
Go. As Keemstar said to Mundane Matt a couple years back on Ralph's retort, go sit in the corner and cry. Have yourself a good cry. You've earned it.
Did you just drop out of the stream?
Who, Matt Dodge or me?
No, Mad Dodge. I think he just dropped out of the stream real quick.
Yeah, I did. I put myself in the back room.
All right, you've atoned for your sins.
Did you do what Keemstar said? Did you sit in the corner and have a good cry and get it out of the way?
Oh, I walked over and prayed to my Star Trek shrine, and then came back.
Hey, I'm sorry,
he's
but
repented.
The Force
we can forgive him now.
As a girl.
Yeah, I asked the dual gods, Jadzia Dax and William Riker, for forgiveness. Riker was iffy, but Dax forgave me.
Okay, so anyway, getting back to who, in our honest opinions, should handle. I would say I would prefer to see a continuation of Stargate as opposed to a soft reboot. I think, if just my humble opinion, because I'm not in the business, if Netflix were to be strictly distribution, they'd be fine. Otherwise, I would like to see it go back to Sci-Fi if they ever got their heads out of their asses.
Well, my scenario would involve MGM selling it outright. That way they made their money. Let's face it, box office, MGM's hurting. Okay, COVID is killing those studios. So they could sell it, make some money off it, throw that money into James Bond, and maybe recover or die with James Bond. That's up to them. But
James Bond is fucked, dude. Let's be honest. Like, James Bond is dead as a doornail.
Well, again, that's something that while you were gone, Doku, I had similarly discussed franchises being run by morons who don't have a clue what they're doing. That's why. I honestly think that it's time for a new James Bond, and by James Bond is the double. And we're not going to veer off this, but to make a quick side note here. The name 007 is an identifier number. James Bond is actually James Bond. So it's time for a new 007, not necessarily James Bond, but they couldn't do that fucking shit right if they tried.
No, that's a fair point. I don't disagree.
So the problem is, if MGM sells it, that would mean Netflix runs it. Unless they sell it to a studio. No, I am not saying they should sell it to Secret Hideout, but I'll use them as an example. They sell it to Secret Hideout. Secret Hideout puts it out on the market. Highest bidder gets it on their streaming service. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
Actually, yeah. No. You know who would do a good job with the Stargate franchise? Get either Bad Robot or Legendary Films.
And keep it away from J.J. Abrams.
Yeah, Secret Hideout is Bad Robot.
J.J. Abrams is the idiot who couldn't even finish Alias.
Oh no, I know Secret Hideout is part of Bad Robot. I'm not saying give it to Secret Hideout. I'm saying Bad Robot, when in combination with Legendary, they could do a good job with it. As Secret Hideout alone, they're kind of a side studio. I don't like any of the shit they put out, to be honest.
What about you couldn't like ramp up Stargate to make it R-rated, really. Even the film wasn't R-rated. Because I was gonna say, what about selling it to Showtime or HBO? But that's not their cup of tea.
HBO actually could probably do a good job with it. Showtime, maybe.
I think Showtime would do a good job with it because Showtime has a history of taking multiple formats and running with it. I know Showtime itself, at least they took Dexter, and after season 4, they that's on the writers and everything else, but they ran Dexter pretty well as a series. They've run the Troubadours, which is a different genre, at the same time as Dexter, very well. during the time I was watching Dexter, there were like 3 or 4 other shows that I was also keeping tabs of and have since fallen by the wayside, but they're all different genres. Showtime did a good job with that. They were basically what we were talking about. They were the distributors. They were saying, hey, we've got this show exclusively on our channel. It's a Showtime show, and we are only in cahoots with the people who run the show. And that's why, and they do have the history of being able to do multiple, genres of shows and run them successfully. HBO, on the other hand, I believe they're the ones who ran Game of Thrones, and look how that turned out because they kind of got their hands into it a little bit too much.
Well, honestly, no, that's specifically Dan and Dave. Dan
and Dave ran out of scripts from George Martin. So
well, they burned through all the books by season 6, from what I understand.
Actually, no, they ran out of material from the books starting at season 5.
Okay.
That's also when George R. R. Martin stopped being a creative consultant for them, and essentially he started praising Vikings around like when season 5 or 6 came out, and wouldn't even acknowledge the HBO series, and that's when everything went off the rails.
Well, that's kind of my point. Jeff Lindsay had say, and even though Dexter, the books, and Dexter's the TV show were vastly different, Jeff Lindsay was still consultative, like, would his character do this? That's what you need. And I think Showtime was more than kind enough to say, hey, we're just going to distribute. We're going to keep our damn noses out of it, and you guys are going to do your thing. I think that's why I would vouch for Showtime.
Isn't HBO putting out the Twilight Zone?
Stargate. I don't know. I don't have fucking cable or shit like that.
Who's putting out the Twilight Zone?
I don't know that either. But just to point out something that Dave was talking about, in regards to HBO being the distributor, that's what HBO did with Game of Thrones. Dan and Dave were exclusively the writers and producers for that show. HBO was just funding them and being the platform they put it on. So you can't really knock HBO for. You can't really knock HBO for Game of Thrones going off the rails.
I can give HBO a little flack because they were the ones that were dealing with Dan and Dave, who then basically said, oh, by the way, screw the series. We're going over to Disney.
Well, yeah, they got an offer from Disney to work on a new Star Wars trilogy, which fell through, and then they went to Netflix.
Yeah.
But
okay, I have bad news. Twilight Zone, one of the best shows ever. Being produced by CBS.
Oh. Well, I probably won't be watching that.
Again, terrestrial television is not the best.
No, it'll probably be on their streaming service, which I just canceled because I finally finished Picard. Do we really want to get into the mess of shit? They have flying fucking orchid flowers. These flowers catch ships and power them down like a giant Venus flytrap. Have you ever seen anything like this in Star Trek?
Okay, wait, hold on. Pause, rewind. What?
Okay.
What?
I finished Picard.
Before you go any further, the reason why Picard has a mental deficiency is, and I believe that Red Letter Media, when they review their stuff, I think they said it best. It's basically the people who wrote this show and produced this show. All they ever did was watch First Contact and thought that's exactly who Picard was and how he would handle things. Because the thing is, Picard is the exact opposite of what he was in Star Trek, The Next Generation, or DS9, or anything. They don't know what the hell they're doing, and they got too personal and political. Picard would not give a shit about 99% of that stuff.
I'm not worried about that. I'm worried about two aspects.
You're the one who watched Picard. I watched the first episode and walked away. Hell, I gave Batwoman more of a chance because at least Batwoman was trying to not be a bitch about stuff. Picard basically just dick whipped you right in the goddamn eye and laughed at you.
Okay, so that's why I'm bringing it up. All right, I finished it finally. First off, when Riker swoops in in the last episode with the Federation fleet and gets the Tal Shiar to stand down, amazing. That is Star Trek. Just what he says, how he acts, that's Star Trek. It was great. Now, before that, there, and I'm not even giving a spoiler warning because I'm giving you this info all out of order. You're gonna have to watch it to figure out what the fuck I'm actually talking about. But the planetary defense for the synthetics is pretty simple. They release these Venus flytrap fucking things up into space, and they catch your ship. Now, your ship doesn't power down until you're caught in the Venus flytrap thing. So you would imagine you would just, I don't know, not fly into giant Venus flytrap yelling, feed me fucking Seymour. But no, they still fly into it because, you know, what's this? This is fucking weird. They actually call these weapons orchids. I call them Venus flytraps because that's what they fucking are. They eat ships. And what they do is they suck all the power out of the ship and make it crash on the planet. Well, now you have landing parties on the planet. That's weird. Anyway, who cares? Moving on.
I'm already tapping out. Like, that is probably one of the most retarded things I've ever heard. Like, no. Like, I haven't even seen the show and I'm done.
And you've heard Hillary Clinton talk, so that's one hell of a comparison to severe mental retardation.
Yeah, so CBS, the same people that said that looks good, are now running one of the oldest and best anthology type science fiction shows of all time, The Twilight Zone. Oh, get bent.
And the greatest planetary defense weapon you have is a fucking Venus flytrap in space. And you call it an orchid. No, dude, I'll give you a surface to orbit, single stage to orbit fucking missile before I'll give you a fucking Venus flytrap. What the fuck?
Well, getting back to the Twilight Zone, who was the original channel that showed the Twilight Zone when it first aired?
I believe it was CBS, which is why they still own the rights, even though it went to syndication years ago. I understand.
Well, no, my point is you can sell things in the syndication and you still make some profit from that. This property has never genuinely left the control of CBS. So whether you agree with it or not, with modern CBS handling the show, which is the problem, modern CBS, it is still a CBS property and has never changed hands. Syndication rights can be sold to different people to show it, and they still make bank from that. That's completely different. My point is, it's modern CBS that is the problem. It is, again, reverting back to what I told you about MGM, with the people at the top being a different breed of morons as opposed to people who actually give crap about the property.
You know what sucks about our copyright laws? Because I believe in copyright laws, unlike a lot of libertarians. I do believe that if I come up with an idea and write a book, that's my idea. That's my property. It came out of my head. Or I co-authored. It came out of our fucking brains, Yeah,
it's your IP. It's your intellectual property. Like,
I get that, but there should be a limit to these corporations.
Have you seen Razor Fist's video about copyright?
I have. I watch most of his stuff.
Okay, because I was going to say, for those who don't know anything about copyright, please go watch Razor Fist's video on the Rageaholic channel about differences in regards to copyright and reserved rights and everything else, especially in regards to entertainment. Mainly because he puts it at a layman terms level so that the everyday person can understand it. I just want to put that out there before you guys continue, in case somebody says you don't know what you're talking about. If they believe you're wrong, they can go watch that video by a guy I know who knows what he's talking about.
Well, no, and I'll say this here. I don't think I've ever actually said it before, so I'll go ahead and say it. I don't care if you guys do responses to me. I don't care if you take my entire fucking stream and mirror it on your channel. Just throw a link in there.
Oh, okay? Hell yeah. I do that to Mr. Medicare all the time, and he doesn't give a shit. He's not one of those people that gets butt fuck bent out of shape over this. A tipster about a month back or so was talking about this kind of thing, where, of course, you can think the way that modern YouTube is because of that dumb bitch Susie Liu. I'm not sure how her and Karen Gillan come from the same fucking island, but apparently they do. He was talking about, people mirror people's stuff all the time, and they don't copyright, they don't flag shit left, right, and center because of it. They simply acknowledge where they got it, and they'll show it in case a video gets taken down. And Mr. Medicare is one of those people. Jim is one of those people. It's like, yeah, I made this video. Go ahead and mirror it all you want. It doesn't bother me. Not only because he doesn't get money from it mostly, but from the fact he's like, hey, I'm just making a video. I want it to be enjoyed. I think that's the mentality people need to have.
Well, yeah, absolutely. But when it comes to this intellectual property, okay, so all you have to do if you're a big company and you own something like, well, let's use the Twilight Zone. Okay, Twilight Zone started way back in black and white TV. So the IP would be up by now if it would have stopped right after its first run. It would be open for anybody to do anything in that world and to broadcast it. But, the property will run out at a certain point. So they always make something right before it runs out just to keep the property owned. And that's how you get these shitty fucking TV shows and movies. Because the property license is going to run out unless they do something with it. And that's how you get a lot of this garbage.
Well, Marvel did the same thing with their characters simply so they could keep it within the realm of property rights ownership. And I don't necessarily fault them for that. They allowed such and I wouldn't consider either one of these movies inferior. I think they're very true to the characters, but they made with the company New World, which doesn't exist anymore, sadly. They made the Punisher in 1987 or 88, I believe, with Dolph Lundgren to keep the property rights to the Punisher in a movie format. That's fine. They did the same thing in 1990 with the Captain America with Matthew Salinger. That's fine. They did the same thing with the Fantastic Four with Roger Corman's version of it just to keep the property rights. That's fine.
I got to cut you off.
Let me finish. Because I know where you're going with this, and I agree. They do this simply to keep it in the hands of themselves, so people who don't share their vision or could even make it worse than what you would consider bad from existing. And whether it's right or wrong, I'm not here to say that, but they do that simply to keep the properties. Because if Marvel had never done that with New World, we wouldn't have had the MCU. We wouldn't have had the Avengers movies. We would have the same. This is why the X-Men turned out to be such a problem. This is why Marvel movies outside of the MCU, with the exception of Blade and a few others, are such a problem, because the property rights for those characters went to somebody else who didn't give a shit. And that's the downside of it. And I think that's where you're going with this Mad Dodge, and it's completely correct, because it's garbage. It's a double-edged sword, and it's garbage because it has to exist that way.
Yeah, but where the problem lies is when they do this, like the Hellraiser series. Oh, let's do a straight-to-DVD Part 4. Why? Because our IP is going to run out unless we do it. We got to keep making that money. Maybe we'll make a good one in the future, right? Let's put out shit for now.
Let's be fair. Is it also one of the properties that not a lot of people are interested in? That I
think Hellraiser has a pretty good cult following, at least the first two.
That's the key word, cult following. The average moviegoer is not interested in Hellraiser. It's a niche market. And straight to DVD, which you're correct, a lot of it is bad. But that's also like the Cannon films back in the 80s, where it went straight to VHS. It's okay. It's pure dick
cheese. What about something like Highlander, where they put out Endgame hardly fucking put together? I've seen a preview version because my aunt
was Endgame or the source.
It was Endgame.
Okay.
And my aunt was working in Hollywood for a shipping company, and what happened was they would ship the screening versions to the studios. Well, she got given a copy of the Highlander movie, and she knew I loved it, so I got to see it before it was in theaters. And it was shit. And the only reason they put it out was to keep the IP, and that IP has ran out since then anyway.
Yeah. I'm not defending that decision. I saw Spoonie's review on that, and I'm like, I can't believe I'm one of those people, I can't believe they made anything past part 2. Because it's in that the TV series alone perplexes me, because it contradicts the movie, which is pretty much a beginning, middle, and end.
Yeah, but the series was better than some of the.
No. My point is, they still made the series. They still made those direct DVDs. They even made the very underrated and pretty darn decent Highlander animated cartoon, or sorry, animated show, to keep the IP to themselves, so they could do what they want with it because it's their property and they can. Again, it's the double-edged sword of, do we do directed, do we do this format and keep it going and try to make a little bit of cash, or do we let somebody else touch it with the possibility they may make it worse?
That's true. And Highlander, I brought that up because it was mainstream. Highlander was a blockbuster movie.
Yeah, it was. And again, it had a beginning, middle, and an end. Connor McLeod won the prize, and he chose to live as a normal man. When part 2 came out, it was, he did this with his life as a mortal person. He regretted it. He wishes he could have done something else. And then had they actually, and if you watch the Renegade cut, it's a little better, but not much. But other people who are quote unquote immortals come back, touch stuff, not knowing that Connor's like, I'm done being immortal. I wanted to be human. And they screw it up. And then at the end of that movie, for good or ill, it's still a shut, it's an open and closed case. There was no need for anything else. But the people that own the Highlander rights went and made on other stuff because they didn't want anybody else to touch that stuff.
Yeah, true. You know what? I think the IP might be running out soon on this one, and I would love to see a TV show out of it. Doku, do you remember the Christopher Walken Prophecy movies?
Nah, I don't really remember them because I don't think I ever really watched them. Like, I might have saw them. Yeah, I might have saw them, but it's not like I really paid attention enough to recall.
Okay, so the basic premise is there's a second war in heaven. Gabriel is leading it against the Archangel. I'm gonna forget an Archangel's name. I'm a horrible, horrible Catholic. Oh my god.
This is where you go to Wikipedia, people, and start reading up on the Prophecy series with Christopher Walken.
Oh shit!
Let me take a.
Dodge ain't gonna remember for squat.
Let me take a guess. If it's Gabriel, then let me guess the other one's Michael.
Thank you. That's my son's middle name. Son of a bitch.
You are a terrible, terrible man that you can't remember your own name.
No, it's not my middle name. It's my son's middle name, but that makes it worse.
That's even worse.
But
hey, I love you, son, and I knocked up your mom, but I can't remember what your middle name is. It's Michael, Dad. Okay.
I didn't pick the middle name. I picked the first and the last.
It's still your kid. You should know that. My goodness.
It's a joke.
If I was your wife, I'd be divorcing you right now.
Hey, she's not here.
I'm not giving her any suggestions whatsoever. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. None at all.
No, but okay. So there's war in heaven. Gabriel and Michael are the two sides, right? And the war is being fought on Earth now, and the reason is there's this prophecy where an immaculate conception is going to happen, but it's not a woman getting pregnant out of thin air. It's a Nephilim. Okay. And the Nephilim is supposed to arise.
The Nephilim is one of the higher choir of angels, people, just to get that out there.
Yeah. So when an angel sleeps with a human female, the baby is a Nephilim. And that's the world. Okay. They made 4 of them and they ended in the 95. So what? 90. There's still another 10 or 15 years till it runs out, huh?
Okay. So what? How does
the show would be better because you could have the flashbacks to the war in heaven, and then you can have a current modern situation going on. Like in this, one guy was a cop. Somebody got killed. They ended up at the morgue, and then they came back alive because you can't kill an angel. Duh. So it's almost like a vampire story, but with angels. It was really good. Christopher Walken did an amazing job. And the first 2 movies were awesome. Third, not as good. Fourth was garbage.
Okay.
But that's something they can make a TV show out of, is my point. It could be a little gritty, like they like their TV shows nowadays. And it would bring new life to an old franchise. Because 4 movies, I'd call it a franchise.
Well, my question was, how does this relate to you talking about distribution rights and copyrights in regards to the Twilight Zone or in general?
No.
We did get kind of sidetracked.
Yeah, it's sidetracked because I'm not sure when the IP runs out on that.
Okay.
But if they do nothing with it, then the IP runs out, then anybody with the money could produce something in that world. And not be stricken down like, somebody making a Star Trek web show. CBS is hitting people pretty hard on that. That's all I was trying to say. I wasn't really like Twilight Zone. Maybe the new one will be good. I doubt it. It's CBS.
Oh, just kind of a mild segue, but related to the topic. I think most people that are actually worth their creative salt, that actually care about certain characters or certain universes or IPs, outside of the corporate, we just want to keep the intellectual property because, it's ours. Normally, they actually reach out to the creators for input, insight, and, hey, I have this idea. I think it works well with your universe. What do you think? Would you be willing to work with us? Would you be willing to help work on the project? Most people, like I said, most people worth their salt who have any type of respect for something generally do that. I mean, that's how Dan and Dave got Game of Thrones to begin with. And again, it's a double-edged sword. Just because you love something now doesn't mean you're going to love it later down the road. But when the corporate side of things, as you guys are talking about, come into, let's just produce some garbage direct-to-DVD movie just so you retain the rights.
Mm-hmm.
It drives away people from wanting to work with that intellectual property, simply because it starts putting a bad taste in people's mouths, and you don't really want your name attached to it.
I don't think it's a good idea to, let's say, Interview with the Vampire, Anne Rice. Let's say she...
I can't believe you went over an hour and a half without mentioning that.
Yeah, what if she kept, she wanted to keep her IP, which I'm sure she does. That's why she writes books. She gets to keep her IP. She's still writing the Vampire Chronicles.
And I'm pretty sure she probably has a backup plan to where which is why family estates exist.
Oh, probably. So I'm sure her IP is not going to run out. But if it did, you would see vampire shows based in the Chronicles, the Vampire Chronicles, all over the place. It would be fair game. You know what I mean?
Would it?
HBO proved that they'll go into vampires with True Blood. Don't you think they'd rather have Interview?
No, because the book series that they got from from what True Blood was based off of was a property that was paid to the creator. They paid the creator. They had her as a consultant, and they made their movie. I think there are enough creators out there that can write good vampire stories or supernatural based stories. Because let's be honest, Stephanie Myers, you can't write for shit little, and E.L. James, or the woman that wrote the fucking 50 Shades, she couldn't untie a knot if her life depended on it. That there are enough good creators out there inspired by Anne Rice and Bram Stoker and Sheridan Le Fanu's Carmilla, that they have the capability of saying this is what the basis of this genre is, and we're going to expand it on a certain way, and that's what they did with the Stackhouse mystery novels, which became True Blood. I don't think anybody honestly wants to buy or own Anne Rice properties. I think they want to be the next Anne Rice because she inspired them just as much as people look up to Jack Kirby. They don't want to be Jack Kirby. They want to be better than Jack Kirby because they were inspired by him. Because if you look at his, and I'm not sidetracking or making comparison, if you look at his artwork to modern artwork, it looks it looks very rudimentary and elementary, and you could, it looks like a kid drew it, even though it's what got everybody started. The same way you could look at the Anne Rice novels and say, this is a very basic story. It's got this, it's got stuff that people have, spun off of in their own way, because it's the groundwork for the modern vampire mythology. And so I think,
actually, you bring up a really good point that I want to just touch on real quick.
Yeah, so that's all I had to say about. No, that's all I had to say, Mad Dodge.
Okay, well, no, you brought up a good point that I wanted to touch on. A lot of times, it's not worth the hassle trying to go through to establish an IP or try to work with another creative developer or get rights to something. And I hate using this example because I hate both of the franchises. When you can have 50 Shades of Grey inspired by Twilight be two completely separate things, a lot of times it's easier just to find another person who is inspired by a certain work, but then changes up enough things that it becomes its own intellectual property altogether.
Okay, you guys have both brought up that stupid book and movie.
Which
the Shades of Grey bullshit.
Well, I was only pointing out that the person who wrote it is incompetent.
Oh, that's fine. I have one comment on that. It's mighty funny how every woman in America went from, oh, I would totally sign that contract and be tied up, to, if you even catcall, you should go to jail. That's it. Leave it alone.
Stop right there. We're not getting into that area. That's politics. We're not going there today.
Just saying. That's it. That was my only comment.
I was simply pointing out, and Lindsay Ellis is the one who brought this up, and I agree with her. The person who wrote 50 Shades of Grey could not fucking untie it, not if her life depended on it, let alone write anything about it. It's basically, just as much as Stephanie Meyer's versions of vampires is the extension of pretty much self-indulgence. Anne Rice, in comparison to what Anne Rice is, where she was talking about taking the vampire mythology and humanizing them. If one of the best books, and I actually have 3 of the books on audio tape, and I've got to find a way to get these to digital or CD format, because the tapes are old and they're still in decent shape, but they probably got one run through left, and that's it. And I would love to get these, completely unabridged onto a digital format. Stephanie Meyer's version of vampires is self-fulfillment because of her religious beliefs, and she did it to make money. Anne Rice, while of course she did it to make money, did it because, and I happen to think this personally, a lot of people say, great, you're taking a mythology of scary creatures and humanizing them. Who were they before? Hold on a second. At the belch. Who were they before they became vampires? Before Interview with the Vampire. The Vampire Lestat is a wonderful book saying this is who Lestat Delancourt, I think that, I can't remember, it's been a while since I read it. This is who he was before he met Louis. This is what he went through before he met Louis. And everybody's tried to copy that. Anne Rice.
Indeed, I'll prove my chops here a little bit. My favorite part of that book is him being trapped in that tower with the guy that turned him, and how he kind of got tortured, and he really didn't have
Marius is his name.
Yeah.
I love that book. I love that character. I'm not going into the movie, but I think Tom Cruise was excellent. But Lestat has the nickname Wolf Killer because he once fended off at least 10 wolves by himself. Marius knew who Lestat was, and Marius picked him out to be his, to take his place. Getting back to property rights, Anne Rice, is very protective, as to where Stephanie Meyers is kind of an idiot and doesn't know what she's doing. I think that applies the same to the Twilight Zone, because while CBS may hold the rights to the Twilight Zone and it is their property, they really Rod Sterling was the creator, and so now what do you do with a property that the man who's passed away a long time ago and no longer has the family estate to say yes you can and cannot do stuff with this? That is where they're at. So it may seem like from a specific angle that, and I'm not disagreeing, that it does smell fishy that they only want to do it to keep the property rights. What are they doing with what can you do with the property right with people who may or may not know what to do with it, as opposed to Anne Rice, who would know what to do with the property rights, and Stephanie Meyer, who's too stupid to figure out what to do with the property rights of their characters.
Yeah, I doubt anybody will be writing in that world after Anne Rice dies for a good, I mean, it takes 30, 40 years, right?
You know her son, Christopher Rice, actually writes within that series, correct?
I did not know that. I actually thought she was like George and pretty much took complete control.
Christopher Rice, her son, actually has a hand in the Vampire Chronicles world and everything that has to do with it. But that's
so
beside,
that's cool.
Yeah. Well, that's when I'm talking about family estates that have certain say over things. But that's beside the point. We're talking about a TV series. We're talking about a TV series that you like being in the hands of people that currently have proven themselves to be untrustworthy of handling material.
Yeah, I would rather see Twilight Zone. I don't know. Because CBS owns it. There's nothing I could do about that. If they licensed it out, maybe to HBO, but HBO would make it too dark, and they have Tales from the Crypt property rights. Why do they?
Isn't that the basic of the Twilight Zone, to be dark, to push? Isn't that the point of the Twilight Zone and the Outer Limits, to push into dark territory of science fiction, to get you to use cognitive thinking?
Well, to use thinking, yes, but I don't remember episodes that scared me. Like maybe when I was a kid, Tales from the Crypt might scare me. Creepshow might scare me. Twilight Zone, you know, I think my favorite black and white one is the guy wakes up and he's the only one left in the world. That
was with Burgess Meredith, and there are 3 episodes that when I talk with people that they come across. That is one of them, and I'm going to look up the title. But there's also the one with William Shatner and the gremlin on the airplane.
Wasn't that the movie? I thought that was the movie.
No. This was pre-Star Trek, way before Captain Kirk stuff. And then
I thought that was the Twilight Zone movie, though. But I remember that too. But my favorite episode had to be that one.
Dodge. That was incorporated into the movie. So you're not wrong. But it's originally William Shatner guest starring. You know, he was the main character in that. And then there is what's called Death's Head Revisited, which Anthrax did a song about that called Intro into Dark, or something. What was the intro? Oh, God, I love that song. But it essentially led into Belly of the Beast. Death's Head Revisited is about a former war criminal, Nazi war criminal, who killed the Jews during the Holocaust, and he goes back to visit the place where he used to serve, and now it's named something else, and he's actually haunted by the ghost of Auschwitz, I believe. That shit doesn't, it's not meant to be jump scare shit. It's meant to be psychological terror. That if you can't say any Twilight episode didn't scare you on some level, then not you, but I'm saying in general, don't watch it, because it's meant to fucking freak you out.
Well, you got to remember, though, watching the black and white stuff, I watched the old Twilight Zone, and I watched the old Planet of the Apes.
Mm-hmm.
I watched them late at night on cable when I was allowed to stay up and sleep in the living room.
Oh, I remember something like that.
So I was a kid. That was over my head, you know what I mean? But the one that stuck with me was imagining being the last man on Earth. And how horrifying that would be. But that didn't, I guess you're right. It's the difference between a jump scare and a thought experiment.
The episode is called Time Enough to Last. It's the 8th episode in the anthology series, which was adapted by a short story by Lynn Venable, in which Burgess Meredith basically is a character who he's basically a character who is more or less shunned by society, and all he likes to do is read books. So essentially, he's the last man on Earth, and he gets to read all the books he wants when he wants, and yet his glasses break, and there's nobody else to fix them. That should be considered that's considered psychological terror, because you're the last human being on Earth, and you can do whatever you want, but the one thing you want to do, you can't, because fate is not without a sense of irony and practically makes you blind.
Yeah, that was such a great episode. Doku, you've seen Twilight Zone. What episodes come to mind for you?
Also, before we go any further, it has there's two parts to it. The first is Time Enough to Last, and then the actual episode we're referring to is called The Obsolete Man. It was actually originally a part of the anthology and then revamped to The Obsolete Man, just for the smart asses out there. So that's not what it's called.
Well, no, speaking on the Twilight Zone, it obviously, yes, the gremlin on the wing of the airplane, a classic. The Last Man on Earth, yes, classic. Personally, my favorite is the one with, I forget the name of the episode, but it's with the kid Billy.
Oh, yeah, it's the one where anything he thinks becomes reality, and anybody who goes against him, he can make into like whatever he wants.
Yeah, he can like erase people from existence, and so everybody in the town basically treats him like God. Like, I think that's one of the better. I mean, that's my personal favorite episode. Just because you're stuck literally at the whims and wishes of a child. It's kind of how I view the modern left nowadays, actually.
It's anybody post Gen X that has a fucking YouTube account, basically, is what you're saying.
Yeah, it's the reason I like it more now than I used to is because it is actually a very accurate allegory for the current society that we actually live in. We're stuck to the whims, wills, and wishes of people who have the mental capacity of children, but yet anyone who goes against them, like, oh, the sky is green. No, it's not. It's blue. Boom, deplatformed. You're gone. Bye. Hey, yeah. Not to go into political things, but the reason I like that episode is because
you're not specifically describing anything political. You're putting things into context of the Twilight Zone is meant to showcase psychological fears, sometimes actual physical terrors, horror, and anthologies of horrific things. And yet, again, fate is not without a sense of irony that, this has come to pass in a certain way. So it's not political at all. It's actually a very astute observation.
Oh, and the reason I like that episode so much is because in the same way that Fahrenheit 451, Animal Farm, 1984, Brave New World were all scarily, in a way, prophetic about the future that we're going to find ourselves in if things continue a certain direction, so was that episode of Twilight Zone. And it does illustrate the type of mentality that we have currently with a lot of particular individuals and their mindset, and the kind of impact it has on society, where you have an entire group of individuals who should be, competent, mature, accountable, living in fear of a child who thinks the sky is green when it's not, it's blue. But how dare you point out facts, and otherwise you get erased. It is such a scarily accurate social commentary, and it applies today more than it did back when the episode actually aired. I think that was in when was that? 1968, 72, something in that range.
I couldn't tell you right off the bat.
I don't remember myself off the top of my head, but I know it was before the 1990s. I can tell you that much.
Well, yes.
So, on a positive note, though, Fox did do that revamp of X-Files, and it seemed to go pretty well. Do you think they'll be bringing Scully and Mulder back in the future, or was that a one shot go?
I really have no standing in regards to the subject because I never liked the show and I didn't hate it. It just wasn't my thing. So I've got nothing. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I honestly don't think they'll bring Scully or Mulder back in as far as like a main character. You might get a cameo, you might get references, but I don't see them having any major role in the show moving forward, which is not necessarily a bad thing, especially considering how old the show is and the age of the actor and actress. It don't touch it. Yeah, let the legacy live, lie there. You know, but it's not like the franchise is dead. I wouldn't touch characters that have already had essentially their full arc completed.
Yeah, and well, that's one of the problems that we have with anything about TV shows these days. Going back to the very very beginning of the segment that we're on, uh, people don't, and I don't know what it is, but people don't want to evolve on certain levels. You have something like the X Files, which has the has great possibilities to do other things. Yet all people want is the pop culture of I want Scully and Mulder, and I go, I don't. Why not? Because it's like anything else. It's characters have their time. They come into the picture. They have their arc. They exit the picture in any manner, and it should. And it's a format that's designed to let you bring in new people along the way and get invested in them as well. That's the problem. People don't want that. Now, again, I never watched the X Files because at the time it came out, I didn't really care. Looking back, I thought, hey, I might have actually gotten into it had I given a crap. But what I know about the show is I don't want Mulder and Scully there forever. It's kind of like going back to Star Trek. We had the Star Trek original series. We jumped forward in time to the Next Generation. We jumped a little more forward in time to Deep Space Nine. And then we had Voyager, whether you liked it or not. And then we went back a little bit and did Enterprise, whether you like it or not. It's still the same show, but different aspects of the show done to various degrees of success or failure. The same thing can go with the X-Files. You can't just have Scully and Mulder and the Lone Rangers, whatever the fuck they called themselves. You can't have that all the fucking time. Even in a comic book adaptation, it's time. There's a time and place for everything, and yes, you can fill in the gaps, but unless you're going to pull a fucking Crisis on Infinite Earths once every 20 years, which you should never do anyway, DC, you have to let that series continue with new characters. In comparison, a great series not a great series, but a great idea, which the series did that, was The Mask. And I'm not talking about the Jim Carrey movie. Get that out of your mind. If you read that comic from beginning to end before it gets retarded and they start doing crossovers, the mask itself goes from different people to different people with varying results. It's a mask of Loki, so to speak, which they never call it. They never call it the Mask of Loki, but it's a mask that goes to different people, to different people, to different people, and they all have various plus or minus regards to your favorability factor of adventures. That's exactly what Star Trek did, and that's exactly how the X-Files can do things if people can get off this I want Scully and Mulder thing.
Honestly, Dave, you're kind of touching on something that needs to be stated, because it is kind of a problem within not just Hollywood, but the entertainment industry in general. When you're talking about aspects of storytelling, you can start a story using the same story elements and change them up, flip them around. I mean, fan fiction's a thing for a reason. In any way, shape, or form possible, and still keep it somehow engaging and fresh. But the one thing you always have to take into consideration and realize is once you begin a story, every story does have an ending. Every character arc, every plot line, there has to be an end. And that's why the saying, before you even start writing the story's beginning, know how it's going to end. Because once you begin writing the story and establishing the characters, and the characters go through whatever arc that you're going to put them in, once the plot is done, if you can't end it, the story falls flat. Right. You need to know where it ends, because everything that you start building from the very first page, the very first chapter, the very first scene has to be building up to that final scene, and it needs to be conclusive. It needs to be decisive. It needs to be satisfying, and it needs to let the viewer or the reader or whoever walk away knowing that there was purpose behind everything that led up to this point.
Right.
Which is
yeah, and you can even start a movie or a TV show at the very end and do nothing but backstory, which leads you up to the end, which was the beginning of that TV show or movie.
Exactly, and that's why the hero's journey stands as, you know, the quintessential framework for how to write a character arc. Because if the character obviously needs a motivation to start the journey, but if there's no decisive ending, that journey never ends, which means there's no real point to the story. The ending is the point. You're supposed to get to that final moment. And I hate to bring back up Game of Thrones, but this is where Dan and Dave fall. This is where Dan and Dave fall flat, because, you know, what's the satisfying conclusion to the ending of these characters? Well, Daenerys becomes what her father is, despite saying don't blame a daughter for the sins of her father. She still ends up becoming the Mad Queen and burning down King's Landing.
Even though everything contradicted that.
Yeah, Jaime goes through his arc of, you know, he goes from being an incestuous bastard who's willing to murder children to being a good person when he's in contact with Brienne of Tarth, and then risking his life and going against his sister's wishes to go help fight the White Walkers, only to just turn around and go straight back to Cersei for no real reason. So there's no satisfying ending to that. It doesn't make sense. It negates the entire purpose of this character arc. Arya and Gendry finally get together. Gendry wants her to be her queen. She says no. Then she just kind of fucks off to go ride a boat somewhere. So what's the point there? What happens to Jon Snow? Oh, he becomes Lord Commander, a bastard, gets recognized, bends the knee to Dany, becomes king of the North, kills Dany, and then gets exiled back to the North, despite there not being a threat of White Walkers anymore. There's no point. There's no ending. It's just lazy. Like, there's no satisfaction to it. It doesn't. And none of the characters have a satisfying conclusion.
Yeah, and in comparison to that, you take Breaking Bad. It's vastly shorter in seasons, but it starts at the end, and you backtrack from the beginning to reach the end. That's a good example of what Game of Thrones could have been, but it chose not to do.
And that's a good way of doing character development. Like, even with, again, going back to Game of Thrones, you know who had good story arcs? Ned Stark, Robb Stark,
yeah,
Robert Baratheon.
Killed him.
Well, the thing is, all the characters that died in like the first like 3-4 seasons, they all had great character arcs. They weren't the main protagonist or antagonist. Like, I'll even say Littlefinger had a really good character arc and a rather satisfying demise. Like, those were well done, but that's because, again, once the character's story had come to a logical conclusion, the story ended.
Yeah.
Did we lose Dodger?
No, he's probably listening to us ramble on anyway. But
yeah, I was Game of Thrones, waiting on the book.
No, what we were talking about was ownership, copyright, and to preserve. Is it essential? From what I'm gathering from Dodge's question statement is it really necessary for an IP to be continually copyrighted by the same company in the modern era, so to speak?
Yeah, companies are okay. I get it. Corporations are people too.
Yeah.
They're made up of people. I understand this, but that company didn't write that IP. There was a writer who wrote it and made a pitch to the company. That writer was getting paid, and then if they die and no descendants are around, the company keeps the rights, and then they make shitty properties out of it just to hold on to the rights for all eternity. It doesn't seem right.
Well, not for all eternity, but yeah, for an extensive amount of time until they find somebody they believe can actually do it justice. But again, it goes back to the chicken and the egg scenario of which came first, them actually knowing what they're doing, and or people not knowing what they're doing and actually learning along the way. And and again, it's with the way it's not with the way things are these days. It's when said property of Twilight Zone came out, it was a vastly different society. It was really the pre-baby boomers writing all this stuff, and now we live in the world of the baby boomers dying off and trying to take us all down with them. There's an ironic quote in season 3, episode 4 of Community called Remedial Chaos Theory. If you guys go check that out for yourself. But what Chevy Chase is talking about is he makes the comment of, is there nothing that these corporations will not do to repackage the childhood memories of our youth for a quick buck? The irony is Chevy Chase being a baby boomer, and that the corporations that he's talking about are run by baby boomers. And yet he's not aware that him being a baby boomer is why things suck in our country. That becomes the continual thing.
And real quick, before we move on to something different, I just want to point out, since you brought it up, it is kind of a double-edged sword. A corporation that is run by people who actually understand what they're doing and respect the IPs that they are actually they hold the rights to. A smart corporation run by people who know what the hell they're doing, they'll franchise it out to the person that can use the IP to their greatest benefit, because profit. So they'll give it to someone. They'll put it in the hands of someone who actually knows what they're doing, and that'll hopefully, as we've seen lately, especially lately, and you want to give it to someone based on merit, not based on esoteric qualifications. And that's kind of a big problem that we're seeing. That's a big problem that we're seeing in the entertainment industry, regardless if we're talking about film, comic books, video games. That's an issue we see from corporations, because they're focusing on marketing. They're focusing on their public presence and appearance. They're not necessarily focused on whether or not you're going to produce a good product. They're just assuming that because it has a name and some notoriety attached to it, that people are just going to go ahead and buy it, and not ask questions. And
lo and behold, the internet says otherwise.
Yeah, hence why we now have the phenomena of get woke, go broke, because people usually don't care about that stuff. Like, yeah, people on Twitter might, but the people buying your product usually don't. The other side of that coin, to go off the chicken and the egg thing, and I'll use the example of The Witcher. If you have a decent IP, decent enough that somebody is willing to buy it, or at least want to co-author or give you royalties, at least always maintain enough control over the intellectual property that you still have more say than the corporation behind it does. It could be a 51-49 type of split, but as long as you're majority in control of it, you can help prevent this type of problem from happening. It's just a lot of creative talent doesn't think that way, because they think, oh, yay, I wrote a book in my free time and somebody's willing to pay me 1% royalty and $2,000 for it. I'll go ahead and sell it. Next thing you know, it's a fucking multi-million-dollar video game franchise, and now you're fucking pissy. Now you have no control over the IP. Like, never sign a contract that requires you to give over majority control of your intellectual property. It's just a bad idea all around. If you adhere to those two rules, the problem that we're talking about with corporations wanting to retain the IP, just pushing out crap product every now and then just to retain the copyright and the intellectual property, that would all be done away with. It's just unfortunate that really good properties do fall into this trap, because people, especially creative types, don't tend to have the type of confidence in their creative intellect, or their just ability to create something engaging, because they don't have the type of money behind them, or the type of the ability to promote and market themselves. So they think like, oh, great, I made $2,000. But you're sitting on an intellectual property that's worth potentially millions.
Yeah, but they don't know what it's worth. Okay, last little bit here. We're approaching 2.5 hours. What's your favorite show of all time and why? I'll go ahead and you'll be surprised. It's not Star Trek. My favorite show of all time would have to be MASH. It has to be MASH. It was a great show. It's held up over the years, and it was funny, deep. It was everything, all rolled up into one. MASH, best show ever. Who's next? The kids are yelling, so.
Doku, are you going to go or what? Oh, God, don't tell me we lost him again.
Maybe. He's on his cell phone.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So if we did lose him and he comes back, ask him again. I don't have a favorite show. I have a shit ton of shows that I do not like equally because I do not believe in equality that it ever exists except for being born in death. We live, we have our experiences of differing varieties, and we all die. I don't have a favorite show. I don't even have a favorite movie. I think the ones that stick with us speak to us on certain levels, and we go back to them time and again at one point or another down the road. See, called it, he bumped out. So I do not have a favorite show. One of my more liked shows is one that I come back to continually. I don't even think I have one of those. I do like Transformers in most of its incarnations. Mainly because it's always fun to see big robots transforming into stuff and breaking shit. And that just comes from me being a child of the 80s. Does the original 1984 Transformers hold up to this day? Hell no. Not even remotely close. It's definitely a product of its time, but that's fine. There are a lot of people who like stuff from the 1950s and 60s that they think's the best ever, and it doesn't even remotely compare to even the 1980s or the 1990s stuff. But I would say that if I were to have a TV show that has really stood the test of time, I'd probably say it's the DC animated universe shows. The Bruce Timm verse. Batman Beyond, Superman, Teen Titans. Which, yes, I don't give a shit when anybody says that Justice League Watchtower at YouTube, the Teen Titans are in that universe. Blow me. And Justice League and Justice League Unlimited. There's something in there for everybody, and that's one of the shows I go back to the most. But I don't have a favorite. But as I was saying about Transformers, I think they've done some, aside from the Michael Bay movies, I think the cartoons have tried to reinvent themselves, and they've done an exceptional job. There's a Transformers for almost every generation, and that's quality of a good show, is if you can reinvent it and stay respectful to its original properties and make it for a current generation that can also go back and say, hey, I kind of like some of the older stuff too. I think Transformers has done that exceptionally well, and it's in my top 5. Probably number 1 property aside from the Bruce Timm verse of the DC cartoons.
Okay, Doku. I said MASH as the best show of all time. My favorite anyway, which I would call the best. And DS9 is number 2, but MASH overall was really good. What's your favorite?
See, that's such a difficult question to answer. If I'm leaving out anything animated, I'm probably going with. I love the original Battlestar Galactica the same way I love Farscape. So it's a tough toss-up between those. Yeah, I know I'm a sci-fi nerd, whatever. If I'm including animated, I guess Robotech would probably be one of my favorites, or Macross, depending on who you're asking. But I can't really pick between any particular show because everything has something good and something bad. But top 3, Yeah, Robotech, Battlestar Galactica original, and Farscape.
See, I came to my decision fairly easily, but then again, I thought about it before the show because I knew I was going to ask it as we wrapped up. But I came to my conclusion basically because I looked at story, plot, the actors coalescing, and what range did it have? And also the season finale or series finale. MASH had the highest watched series finale for like 20 years. The cast all loved each other mainly. From what I heard, I haven't heard of any arguing, behind the scenes, unlike Star Trek shows. And they had a range, everything from comedy to serious to dramatic. I mean, think about the end of MASH. That was pretty much a movie where Hawkeye loses his fucking mind. It was crazy coming from MASH, wasn't it? I mean, you've seen it, right?
See, I was never a huge fan of MASH, so like I can't comment. Like I haven't seen enough to really give an opinion.
I never got into it. I'm sorry, it wasn't my thing.
Fair enough. My grandparents watched it. My friend's dad watched it, and now I watch it. And I found out when I went to Louisiana, my dad watches it regularly, along with like Bonanza and stuff. But I mean, if you're looking at best show of all time, you could talk about Bonanza. You could talk about I Love Lucy, or the what was the one where they threw their hats? Mary Tyler Moore show. I mean, these shows that were groundbreaking and started, TV. But that's not really what we were trying to talk about. Thank you everybody for coming out. I'm going to try and do a Friday show, a Redeye about politics. I know Penoid's probably not still here. I haven't seen him talk shit in the chat, but Penoid, you'll get your politics tomorrow, I think. And
I'll be working.
My head's going to explode, and Doku's going to talk for an hour straight because I'm not doing this alone, Doku. I'll wait till you're free.
Yeah, well, I'll be there because I'm sure, considering the way things are going, we're going to have plenty to talk about. But and, before we do bug off out of here, I don't think anyone's mentioned it unless you mentioned it when I was gone, but something I would like to bring up just as honorable mention. Are you afraid of the dark?
Fucking goddamn, that was
I loved that show. That show was awesome. Yeah. Like, that was our version of my kids, especially my oldest son, watching Goosebumps. You know what I mean? I'm like, oh, it's Are You Afraid of the Dark, but different.
Yeah, no, that show deserves a mention. It doesn't give enough credit, and I don't want it to be lost to time because that was a well-done anthology-style show.
All right, there you go.
Yeah, and yeah, you're going to make me start talking Nickelodeon, old school Nick. I'm not going to do that. No, good night, everybody.
Right now, you don't know old school Nick, buddy.
Oh,
welcome to Good Burger. Can I take your order?
We can talk about some Rugrats.
No. Good night, everybody, before we start a war. Good night.
We're at it.